And I'm going to ask you, Aaron, to stand a little more to your right so you don't have the screen behind you. There you go.
Here, just let me come to it. I'm just about to start.
I never get to sit in the
I don't
back.
think I've ever seen you.
No, I know. Okay, you can hear me? Can you hear me okay?
1 second. Yeah, go ahead, Nora.
Knowing the perfection of the phone call from God right now for James.
Talking, so let me call you back. Okay, I'll call you over break. Okay, bye. Children.
Okay. Knowing divine right timing. We're a little late and that is perfect because I know that right now this is a beautiful evening, an intimate evening here. And so I know in this breath, I invite everyone to take a deep breath, coming into focus, coming into discovery, coming into a night of religious awakening. And I know that there is one source, one backing of this life, of this class, of energy, of everything, and that is source, that is spirit. And I know that I am that. I know that every single person here is that. And I know that the unfoldment tonight is the perfect information of combining all of the religions, the perfect knowledge that we know right here and right now, to see the oneness in every religion, to see the oneness of us, our evolution, our consciousness to the great I am. And so I declare this a divine night, a divine teaching, a divine revelation of the truth of the perfection of relative experience of all of it. And so I stand in gratitude, knowing, so thankful to live this truth, love this truth, and be a part of speaking, writing, and teaching this truth. And I simply release this into the law, knowing my word is law. As together we say, and so it is.
So it is. Stay there. So, what were you talking about? What was your intention?
My intention was to know the perfection of tonight's class.
Okay. So, how did you get off? Did you feel that you got off?
Yeah, I was a little bit thrown off by holding this and just, I don't know why. And I looked at you and you went, so I was like, I guess I'm not doing that good.
Well, I didn't know what you were talking about at one point.
Okay.
And I mean, you said we're here tonight to learn the relative experience. I don't know what that means.
Okay. I guess I just meant the religions and all the different relative perspectives and different language and semantics around the one truth.
But what does that mean, the relative perspectives?
The relative perspective, the microcosm of the macrocosm, that individual experience of what the truth is through a different religion.
Okay. I think when you use the word like relative in our teaching, we consider relative meaning the form. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, the relative experience. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that what you want us to get tonight, the relative experience of this?
Yeah, I do, because I think it's to have openness and understanding around all the religions. For me personally, when I can see it from their relative experience of whatever language it is, whether it be some dogmatic or not, that I'm looking to find the common ultimate truths within all of it, the common denominator.
That would have been better said.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure. I still don't think you explained to me what you think relative experience is from our teaching, from what we're talking about. The other part is when you started. Well, give me your process when it started.
I don't know. I guess I just didn't get into source.
Okay, that's my question.
Yeah.
So tell me what source is.
Just being fully connected into the highest consciousness within me.
That's what source is, or that's you connecting to source?
Myself, yeah, into that, my highest self.
So when you say we go to source, what do you mean?
I mean, my consciousness connects to the infinite potentiality within me, into my highest consciousness, without contemplation or consideration of anything limited.
Okay, good. when you guys are treating and you use words like that, it needs to be backed by a consciousness of what that really is, or else it's just a word. It felt like just a word, like source. So you need to start, when I asked you what source was and you explained it, that should have been in your treatment, not just the word source. You can't, I don't want you to be using trigger words, just words. You need to start expanding in your words, because what I didn't feel from that treatment was any emotion. I didn't feel anything from it. And the only thing treatment is a movement of energy. I didn't feel energy moving. I just felt words, and they were trigger words, a lot of them. Just words that we use.
I mean, most of the time I'm able to get into it with the 5-step, but quite frankly, I think that's one of the pitfalls of this teaching.
And that's why you can't do it, because you think that.
Well, because I'm always like consciously trying to think about the next step instead of just getting into source and wherever that takes me, instead of thinking about the 5 steps. So sometimes actually the 5 steps.
At this point, you should not be thinking of the 5 steps, not at this point in your career. If you are, then you really need to get hunkered down and figure this out. I don't think do you guys think of the 5 steps? You probably do, David, but you're still you're not even a practitioner yet.
It's become yes but no.
Good. Okay. So you should not be doing
Well, yes and no. I'm the same. I don't normally.
But he's not a practitioner yet. You're a practitioner. Okay. And you have been for over a year, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I just feel like honestly, the truth for me, James, is sometimes I love everything, but sometimes I feel like I only get critiqued in here. And so sometimes I get like, it's hard sometimes. I just want like one positive thing to come out of your mouth sometimes.
Okay.
And I get that you're here to critique me. I get that.
I give you so many compliments, so I think that's very unfair what you just said.
Okay, well,
I support you. I hold you up so high around here, so that is absolutely inaccurate.
Okay.
You can't be so defensive, because here's the thing, guys. We cannot be walking around doing treatments that do nothing. I mean, who are we if we do that? Who are we if we just walk around saying pretty words? Nothing.
I totally agree.
So that's what you just did.
I agree.
Okay, so let's do it again.
Okay, I'd love to.
Okay.
And I love you. And I love everyone here. Just like
I love you too. But I'm here to teach you. Not to tell you how pretty you look.
I get that. Sometimes I just want.
Well, sorry, you're not going to get it. You're always going to get me. If you do something this off, you're not going to get me to go, here's what I liked about it. But let me tell you what was, you're just not going to get that.
I would have rather had you just say, you know what, you're not connected. Let's do it again. You know what I mean?
I want you to know why you're not connected.
I get that. I get that it's like, the words for me don't mean anything. It's like, did I get connected? Did I know the truth or not? It's like, no, I did not. I didn't feel it at all. I don't know why.
Then you should not have stopped talking.
Okay.
And you all know that, right? If you are not feeling it, don't say, and so it is, and think we're all going to be okay with it. Mm-hmm. That's just not who I want us to be. No. If I'm not into it, I will just keep talking until I finally feel what I'm supposed to be feeling. Because guess what? If you're not feeling it, we're not feeling it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
COD, sweetie.
Okay.
Criticism on demand.
Okay, knowing that I choose to invoke right here, right now, this divine source that I know is the backing of every single thing, every breath I take, every cell of my body, every single experience of my day. I know that as I drove here, the traffic is that. I see this technology is that. I see that every single person here is that. And I know that this one source is what we call divine, God, life, source, the backing of the energy. And I know that I am that. That's all that I am. That is the essence that I am. And I know that every single person, that is who they are. And that we are this oneness. And I know that here right now. And so I invoke this sacred space tonight, declaring this is a perfect night of learning. This is a perfect night of discovering the religions that we are, the oneness in the different languages and the different sources and the different experiences of that, and the perfection. And I'm so grateful to be learning and expanding my consciousness and everyone's consciousness here. And so I declare this a perfect night. And I am in gratitude. I'm in gratitude for all of this, for every morsel of it. And so I release this with feeling into the law, knowing this is my word. And and this is the law. And together we say, and so it is.
Well, that was remarkably different.
Thank you for your
Yeah. My pleasure. Okay, you're up, Helen.
Oh, I thought Helen goes first.
Oh, Helen, you're first?
Yeah, Helen.
Hey, Helen, can you possibly find a place in your house that shows some light on your face? Could you put Helen up there for me?
I'm sorry.
Is that better?
No.
Yes, not better.
You
Beautiful.
look gorgeous, but it's just, that's good, okay.
Okay, I'll move it back.
That's better, that's fine.
I could turn a whole bunch of lights on.
You're
You
good.
look great.
You're fine.
Okay. Do you have my keynote there?
I do. Let me just pull it up on the screen.
Okay, I'm just gonna pull it up on mine. Maybe.
Where are you? There you are. I just learned how to do all this the right way.
Oh,
So it's going to take me a minute to do it.
You got it right way.
I'm going to do it the right way. Can
It's
you?
much quicker to do it the wrong way.
It is so much quicker to do it the wrong way, but can you guys see the screen? What's going on the screen?
That is Ellen's and not Helen's.
Helen,
Is that Helen's? My sorry.
she's not going to speak on Taoism as far as she
not
knows.
going to speak on
No, I wasn't prepared for
Didn't I
that.
tell you this is my idea tonight? You have to speak on
I'll tell you
Helen's.
what, I'll stand up and do Buddhism and you do Taoism.
I have no idea about Taoism.
Wait, is that Karen Frost?
That is Karen Frost.
Hey, Karen, you're here.
See?
Karen Frost.
Are you in Chicago?
Listen to you.
I am in Chicago, yes.
Oh, hell.
Okay.
Yeah, all year. It's cold there.
Hi,
isn't it?
Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Hey, it's not that cold here. It's actually pretty good. Chicago weather is working for me today.
Awesome. So glad.
We'll go back to download.
Thanks.
I had it open. Didn't I have it open? Ellen, weren't we playing with it?
You're playing
Are you
mine.
2 hours or 3 hours ahead of us?
2.
2.
2. You're on my time zone.
Hooray!
Yes, they'll be both getting bleary-eyed at the same time.
Yeah.
We will, yes.
Just open now. It worked earlier.
Just put it on the screen, click on it, and then just go to share screen.
Yeah, it's not giving me the share screen. It's just going.
You gotta go up top. You gotta go up here. Should probably go up. Are you, is this just the screensaver right now? Okay, so hold on. Where's Zoom?
This is Zoom back here.
But where's your?
Click on Zoom. The screen shares down here,
Share screen.
but if it's not up here is when we start to have problems. I just realized what it's doing. This one. Okay. Let's move you guys over here.
Okay, that's
Okay, great.
Is that it?
yeah, but that's the end of it.
Okay, well,
Let's go up to the top.
let's just go.
Let's try the beginning.
Nothing.
We could go backwards, but it might not make much sense.
Don't watch.
Don't look. Nobody
Don't
look.
look.
That's the beginning.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yay, I did it.
Okay,
Well, but I got it done. Okay.
cool. Okay. So, hi everyone, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. So here's what I'd like you to do. To start off, because we're talking about Buddhism, I would like you to take a moment and bring yourself into presence, to breathe in, to feel and know that there is a light, a love, a presence that's all around us. And I would like you to focus your mind on this quote. The mind is everything. What you think you become. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. And what I'd like you to do is breathe that quote and feel it coming into your mind, into your body, and saturating yourself with this idea and understanding that the mind is everything. And I would say that this is very much aligned with our teachings in what Ernest Holmes teaches, which he used to say, change your thoughts, change your life. What you think, we experience in our life, which is the law of cause and effect. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So interesting how Buddhism is, and you'll see as we move throughout the session, that there are a lot of similarities, but there are some really distinct differences as well between Buddhism and religious science. And so, Connie, if you could go to the next slide, please. So Buddhism has been around for about 25,000 years, and it started in India. Siddhartha Gautama was the one who discovered really his intention was how to bring happiness into the world. And he was born before Christ, about 500 years before Christ, in this small kingdom. And his father was a king and his mother was a queen. And interestingly enough, soon after the prince was born, wise men predicted that he would become a Buddha. Now that kind of reminds you of the story of what?
Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Jesus and the three wise men, yeah. And when the king heard about this, he was deeply disturbed, for he wanted his son to be a ruler. So he decided that he would make the son's world so pleasant and so happy that his son would never want to leave. So he created the palace and everything in it for his son to be happy. And so again, this is very much looking at the world of effect is going to make us happy. So the things, our environment, everything outside of us. And this is what Buddha's father had attempted. But at the age of 16, the prince Siddhartha married a beautiful princess, and the king had built them 3 palaces, one for each season, and lavished them in all these luxuries. It sounds a little bit like a Disney movie. And of course, they passed their days in enjoyment. Until one day, just like in a fairy tale, the prince had looked beyond the walls and discovered that there was more to his world than what he was actually experiencing in the palace. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Connie. So when Siddhartha had looked beyond the walls of the palace and he wanted to see this outside world, he discovered 4 sights. An old man who was feeble and rendered helpless, a sick man who was ravaged by disease, a dead man and his corpse being carried to the burial ground. So he also experienced the grief of this man's family, and a monk who had renounced all the worldly charms and thus in happiness and peace, sitting under a tree, was not affected by any of the tolls around him, any of the grief, any of the suffering. And Siddhartha pointed his finger and said, I'll be just like him. And this is what Siddhartha was looking for, was a way to release the suffering in the world. And so if you can go to the next slide, please, Connie. So there were a few things that he went through. And one is that he renounced, which was to reject all of his worldly pleasures and safety, and he left the kingdom and his loved ones behind. and he became a wandering monk. So again, you know, it's very similar to Jesus, where Jesus went into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, and he went on a sojourn of discovering enlightenment. So he wore ragged clothes and he wandered around from place to place, and he studied from all the wisest teachers, and yet none of them knew how to end suffering. So he continued his search, and he practiced this self-discipline and avoidance of all forms of indulgence. So anything that brought him pleasure, thinking that this was going to lead him to enlightenment. And then he sat in meditation, and he only ate roots and leaves and fruits, and at times ate nothing and fasted, and still did not experience this sense of enlightenment that he was looking for. There's the bump, the bottom.
Somebody is talking, somebody's chatting. So if you have a question, just unmute and ask your question. I can't get to
Sorry, Karen, because it kept popping up and I couldn't quite catch it, what you were asking.
My bad. I didn't know how this works. So is the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, was that like a fictionalized account of this? Or I don't know if you're familiar with it, because it's something that I barely remember from high school, but I'm wondering if if this story is sort of told in a fictionalized way, or like just sort of where does this come from? Like what's the source material for the stories?
Well, this is everything I found on the internet that was still, I mean, they all pretty much lined up. So I didn't take it from his book, but I did take things from.
Well, it's just a question. Like is that what it is? It's like what is, you know how like Christianity comes from, there is a Bible. Like what's the book where this is?
Book. There is no book. No, it's it's written down in history, I believe, but there is not a book on Buddhism. Like there is a book on the Bible, or a book on Christianity for the Bible, or the Torah for Judaism.
So do you know, like, was it something written in some ancient language that's been translated? Like, where did the stories come from about the four panels that were the dead man and the wise man, and where did that come from?
You know, that's a really good question. I mean, everything I looked at the internet and on YouTube said exactly the same thing. So, but you're right. I don't know. I assume it was recorded in history, but I do not know if there was a specific book.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wondered.
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. Thank you. And something I will look up.
So
but I kept finding the same story everywhere I read.
Can I ask a related question now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was making sure she'd hear. Along those lines, then, is what we know about the birth of the Prince Siddhartha, is that actually chronicalized, or is that part of the myth, the story?
No, it's chronicalized.
So there are records of his life.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, what Siddhartha understood was that leading a life of luxury, or leading a life of renunciation, either way did not lead him to happiness. And so if you go to the next slide there, Connie. So what happened for him was he did sit under the Bodhi tree and in deep meditation, and basically committed to finding an answer, and said, I will not leave this until I find an end to suffering. And again, this is it's so similar to the Bible, in that, you know, talking about in terms of Adam and Eve, and being visited by Mara, the evil one, who tried to tempt him away, and he still sat there under the tree in meditation, and there were bolts of lightning and heavy rain, and he sent armies away with weapons, or he was attacked by armies with weapons. And again, Gautama was able to defeat them all with his virtue. And as he struggled, as the struggle had ended for him, he realized that the cause of suffering and how to remove it, and he felt like he'd gained this wisdom. And so I think really what it's illustrating is that he went on a sojourn to find enlightenment and had undergone a number of tests, and through each one of these tests and experiences, it led him on his path to where he felt he became what is known as Buddha, which is the awakened one. And from then on, he was called Buddha, or a Sakaya Muni Buddha. And so if you go to the next slide, please. So during his enlightenment, what Buddha found was the answer to these questions. And this is actually really the same as science of mind. Nothing's lost in the universe. Things just change form. And he refers to this in nature, how things die and they decompose and they go into nature and they become part of the soil, and then, refurbish the soil, and that our solar system is continuing to disintegrate and turn into cosmic rays. And then and it's always in changing, but it's never lost. And the same thing with our parents. Like, we're born of our parents as our parents are born of their parents, and our children are born of us. And there's a constant in the universe. But as in the second point, everything changes, but nothing is lost. And then the third thing is he talks about the law of cause and effect, and that there are continuous changes due to the law of cause and effect. And this is the same the same way that we talk about cause and effect, that our mind is the cause and creator of what we experience in our life, whether it is good or bad or right or wrong, and that nothing from our past, anything from precedent, does not affect how we change in this moment, the cause in our life, to do something. So if we did, as he says, if we did something bad in the past, it doesn't matter. We can choose to do something good now and change the course of action. And this is what he talks about with karma. He says it becomes our friend because it teaches us, when we experience ill effects, that we can change that to create something that is better for us. And so, Connie, if you go to the next slide. So for Buddha, there's 4 noble truths. And he says, no one can escape death and happiness. If people expect only happiness in life, they will be disappointed, which is interesting. This is where I think there's a difference between what we believe, in that, we can expect happiness and not be disappointed. But what he says is there's suffering, and that everyone suffers at some time. And, with that, I would say probably most of us have experienced suffering at some time or another. And that we are the cause of our suffering. And he talks about we're the cause mostly because of our own ignorance and greed and attachment to what he talks about, the wrong kind of pleasures. I don't know if I would label it the wrong kind of pleasures. Maybe they're just not as healthy or beneficial to us. But he said that basically anything that we do that causes suffering, we cannot be satisfied or enjoy life. And that to stop doing what causes the suffering is the way to end suffering. and that suffering is basically from ignorance, and it means really changing our perceptions, changing our views of a situation, and stepping into a more peaceful, natural way of being. And I love what he says, the flame of suffering is put out for good when we shift our perception. And the Buddhists call the state in which all suffering is ended nirvana. And that's what they're looking, that's the place they're looking to get, is to nirvana. And I would say similar, we're looking for that higher place of consciousness or enlightenment, and that, you know, it's that nirvana is that everlasting state of joy and grace and peace and love. They say great joy and peace. And the path to end suffering is that everyone can be enlightened. And the path to end suffering is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. It's also known as the middle way. So if you go to the next slide there, this is considered the way to end suffering. And basically it's a wheel, and in the center you'll see is nirvana. So all of these different aspects lead into the center, and once you reach the center, you've reached nirvana. So right view is looking at things in the right way. Right thought, which is again a higher consciousness of thought. Right speech, speaking kind and loving words. Right conduct, which is basically what I would say working in or taking action in integrity and doing the right thing, which would be healthy, loving, constructive things. And the right livelihood, which is living a life that is fulfilling. And right effort, which it would be just making the right and perfect action. Right mindfulness, so again, contemplating our mind on healthy, loving thoughts, which goes into right concentration, which is through meditation and contemplation of just really focusing our mind on spiritual truth versus getting caught up in the relative. And so basically what he says is, you know, all of those aspects, when we're in the fullness of that, will lead us into the center, which is nirvana. Does that make sense for people? Are there any questions on that?
Does any one of them lead you to nirvana, or must you accomplish all 8?
My understanding is all 8.
Okay.
And do they believe in multiple lifetimes to achieve that, or just one?
Good question. Multiple lifetimes. They do believe in reincarnation, and that, yes, you can work through times when you haven't made conscious, constructive choices, that they believe you will come back. And they believe you can come back as animals, as humans, as people with they refer to it as like people with very enlightened powers that are very high energetic, like what we would call psychics, or people that have a vibration of being able to tap into that energy. I mean, which we believe everybody does, but they say you can come back as different things. And different levels of consciousness, basically, depending on what you do or don't do. Okay, next one there.
In regards to the Eightfold Path, did I unmute myself? Sorry. Do these words change? Like, do they vary? Are there different interpretations of what they? So those are all static. Every sect of Buddhism identifies that these are specifically the word choice associated with it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
What determines what is right thought, right speech, right conduct?
Anything that brings compassion, that is compassionate, that is loving, is peaceful, joyful. So and I think it's basically what we would, actually, if you go to the next slide there, Connie. Oh, that's not actually going to tell you. It would be the slide after that. They have, you know, like Christianity has the 10 Commandments. They have the 5 precepts of which you base your life on, which would lead to the right action, the right thought. So in Buddhism, they call, what they want is the triple jewel, which is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And the Sangha means living in a harmonious or a harmonic community. And these are the monks and nuns that live in communities, and it's considered a place of refuge. And if you want to become a Buddhist, then you must go to a place of refuge. And then they talk about Dharma is the way. So that's the 8-point system that we went through. And that Buddha is the ultimate guide. And when you go to a monastery and you want to be initiated into Buddhism, they have the 3 lines that people speak and contemplate on is, I go to Buddha for refuge, I go to Dharma for refuge, I go to Sangha for refuge. And so if you go to the next.
Who's Dharma?
Dharma is the, that's what we would call like, that's what, almost like what we would call first cause or the absolute, right? Dharma is the way, so it's the right thought, the right action, and it's creating from that high place of consciousness. So you're creating a positive effect versus a destructive effect. That's my understanding of it. It's like you get Dharma points or you get karma points. Does that make sense for everyone? Does anybody have any other ideas about that? I'll take the silence as a no at this point. So the 5 precepts are important rules, and this is what was passed down from Buddha. And there's no killing of anything. There's respect for all life, which I would really fail because I still squash mosquitoes. But they would never ever harm anything that is living. There's no stealing, which is respect for other people's property. There's no sexual misconduct. So I'm not exactly sure what the misconduct is. I'm assuming perhaps having an affair or something. I don't know. But that would be from my own perspective. So there's no lying. And respect for honesty, and then no intoxicants, so no wine at all, which I couldn't be Buddhist then. So, but they really, what they do is they have a respect for a clear mind, and so these are their rules. And if you're going to be Buddhist, this is what you're going to follow. So next one there, Connie. So there's 17 major ideas in Buddhism, and this is an overall picture. And because there's Tibetan Buddhism, there's Chinese Buddhism, there's Japanese Buddhism, there's lots of different branches of Buddhism, but they all adhere to the precepts and these major ideas. And that is, Buddha's not a god. Buddha was a person who became enlightened. And you should not believe anything without thinking, and which I love. I mean, that's very much aligned to what we believe in terms of, you know, think for ourselves and really ask ourselves, is what our thoughts are they coming from that higher place of consciousness, or is it there's some sort of erroneous belief? Gods and deities are cultural, so it's not necessary to pray to a god or a deity. You don't have to worry about too much about the nature of God, because God just is. And it's everywhere present. So it's just all happening all the time, which is aligned with what we teach. The purpose of life, I think I'm missing a word there. I don't know what it is. The afterlife depends on this life. So depending on what we do in this life will depend on how we reincarnate. Books and teachings are very important. So a lot of study, meditation is of the utmost importance. And that healing comes from our mind, from mind, which is what we believe, and that it's up to ourselves. So there's a personal responsibility, and it's really up to us to be present and conscious, and to there's no one there checking to see whether we're following the rules or anything else. It's our own responsibility. That our bodies are precious, and the spiritual community is very important. That the interconnectedness is the nature of reality. So what I take that to mean is that it's just a normal thing that everything is interconnected. And, you know, we could say that whether that's in mind or in reality, it's one of the same. It's good to be good. And compassion is key. And that is something that the Buddhists are known for. And sex is neither bad nor good. Strive for balance, and it's never too late to begin. And then next slide there. This is a quote from Buddha. 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. They didn't have truth with a capital T, but I would put truth with a capital T, as in spiritual truth cannot be hidden. And then, Connie, I don't know if you can, oh, thank you. I need to not have the screen because I have something that I want to read and now I can't access it on my computer.
Does that work?
No, now I see nothing except for the one slide.
I thought I had shared it. I'm sorry. Hang on.
Just take it off the.
No, it's not on. What are you seeing that I'm not getting?
What are you seeing now, Helen?
All I'm seeing is the first screen, and I can't access anything on my computer.
It's not shared anymore. That's what I'm not understanding.
The first screen of your slideshow is what you're seeing?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just pushed escape. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I wanted to share something from Thich Nhat Hanh. And this was from Richard Rohr's post. So Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Vietnamese Buddhist teacher, uses the idea of making cookies to illustrate our confusion about who we really are. And I love this analogy. Imagine that the moment each cookie leaves the bowl of dough and is placed onto the tray, it begins to think of itself as separate. You, the creator of the cookies, know better. You have a lot of compassion for them. You know that they are originally all one, and that even now, the happiness of each cookie is still the happiness of the other cookie. But they have developed discriminating perception and suddenly set up barriers between themselves. Get out of my way. I want to be in the middle. I'm brown and beautiful, and you are ugly. Can't you please spread a little in that direction? We have a tendency to behave this way also, and it causes a lot of suffering. If we know how to touch our non-discriminating mind, our happiness and the happiness of others will increase manifold. We all have the capacity of living with non-discriminating wisdom, but we have to train ourselves to see in that way, to see the flower in us, the mountain in us. Our parents and our children are all us. When we see that everyone and everything belongs to the same stream of life, our suffering will vanish. Non-self is not a doctrine or a philosophy. It is an insight that can help us live more deeply, suffer less, and enjoy life more. We need to live the insight of non-self, which, with the great irony, we discover to be the one true self. And I love that, because I think what she did is describe the essence of Buddhism, which was the contemplation and the embodiment and knowing that we're all one and there is nothing that is separate, and to just always hold that state of compassion and love. That's it.
So Helen, what would you say?
I've got 2 questions. I'm sorry.
Yep.
What would
Yeah,
you
I've got all the questions. My
difference
bad.
between Buddhism and, well, any of the other Christianity, New Thought? What do you see as the difference?
Well, what I see is the difference between Christianity and Buddhism.
Christianity, New Thought, any of us?
I would say probably, well, I think there's differences in each of them. I think Christianity is still looking to something outside of us to give us an answer, where Buddhism is very much going within and experiencing our oneness and our connectedness, and taking action from that place, which I see is very much aligned with New Thought and very similar. I'd say, we don't have to go to in New Thought, we don't have to go and renounce all of our worldly possessions, or shave our heads, or remove ourselves from everyday life, like they do a lot. A lot of Buddhists believe in living in their spiritual community, and so while we live in community, it's not. I say we're in community. I don't know if we always live in community the same way.
Okay.
Karen?
So I had a couple questions. One is, you mentioned the spiritual community, but I'd love more information as to what that consists of. What day of the week do they meet? Do they meet multiple times a week? What do they do when they meet? And the other thing was the nature of God, then not to worry about what the nature of God is. Does that mean that Buddhists allow people to just not worry about it? They don't make any effort to define what that is and focus on the oneness element? How do they reconcile what God is?
I think they reconcile what God is through nature, in that they in the understanding, just like even in nature, there's a beginning, a middle, an end, and a repurposing, and a decomposing, and then new life. And that's how very much how they see themselves. In terms of community, you're right. I didn't get much into community, but community, from what the reading that I did, was, I don't know if there's, I think if they get together every day, it's not, they don't worship on a specific day. Every day is worship, and every moment is worship, and it's a way of life. It's not like you go to church, you worship something or someone, and then you go back to your regular life. Buddhism, it is your life. That is what you live, what you eat, what you breathe all the time, and you do that a lot of the time in community.
Question, Helen?
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning and bringing it up in your presentation that Buddha is not God, because a lot of people have misinterpreted that, particularly Christians, thinking that they're worshiping a God named Buddha. But it's easy to understand why that is. What's going on? When you say worship, what does that mean in Buddhism, in Buddhist terms? And when they are doing these ceremonies in front of these immense, and I've seen many beautiful immense temples where they have these immense figures of Buddha, if he's not God, what are they doing worshiping in front of that? What's going on with that, if you know?
Yeah, from my understanding, it's ritual. It's honoring and it's ritual, but it's not, my understanding, it's not to Buddha. It's to the teachings, and I don't know if it's worshiping it more as it is contemplation and meditation and chanting. But chanting is very much, it's not chanting to something. Chanting is a way of raising your vibrational level to have an experience. So I don't, and I'm sorry if I use the word worshiping, because I certainly don't mean they worship. They don't even worship to Buddha. They just,
Thank you.
it becomes a way of life.
Yes, you do.
Oh,
And it's in search of nirvana, which is the enlightenment.
You can now, yeah.
Helen, hi. Are there any in the different branches, or are there any like organizational, things? Are they organized as religion? How do they get money to build temples and that?
Yeah, they rely a lot on people giving them things to build or to build the temples for them. They don't believe in begging, but they do believe in receiving offering. And so how much that varies from culture to culture, like from Tibet to Vietnam, I don't know if it varies that much, but I know that that's a philosophy that they believe in receiving. So a lot of monks will go take their bowls and go into a village in the morning and receive whatever people will give them for breakfast. But they're not actually begging.
Well, what about overriding organizational things? Are there any?
You know what? In all honesty, I don't know. I didn't delve into understanding the organizational part of it. I was looking more at the more of the philosophy of it.
Oh, thank you.
Question. So you talked about that Buddha Siddhartha tried renunciation and basically luxury, and neither of those ended suffering. And then he went, of course, to under the Bodhi tree. But from what I've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that he went back to indulgence and went back to like whatever later in his life. And so I don't know. I've heard that that is the truth. I don't know. And so I'm wondering, so if he didn't go into renunciation, which it seems like most of the monks are in renunciation. So I'm confused about luxury versus, I guess it's just the right living, the eighth path is what is the middle way instead of renunciation.
Yeah, and it's living without attachment. So, you know, when he renounced all of his former pleasures, for that it put him into a place of suffering. And I think it's well, and he came to the realization it's neither suffering nor the pleasures that are bringing him the happiness, that it's really the detachment from either or. So yes, that middle way.
Yeah, I mean, the monks don't seem like they're in the middle way, but.
Yeah, they don't seem like they're the middle way to me either, but.
No.
So Helen, can you speak at all to modern Buddhism, modernistic viewpoints? For instance, the difference between Buddhism in the United States and Buddhism perhaps in Asia?
No. I mean, in all honesty, no, I didn't go into that at all.
Okay, so what you presented to us was a very pure version of the traditional Buddhism. There's a lot of Buddhists in this country, but they're also very rich, and they're living in very beautiful houses and have a lot of things. So it makes me wonder, does that mean they're not really living a Buddhist life? Or is there a modern, I mean, like for instance, Trungpa. Trungpa is a modernist Buddhist and has literally created a sect of Buddhism that's very different than what you were describing.
I think it's like what Helen said.
Interesting. I've never heard of that.
Mind.
Yeah.
Because I loved what you said, that, you know, when you talk about Buddhism finding God through nature, and I love the cookie thing, and I love Thich Nhat Hanh. The whole concept of oneness and non-self, and we teach that too, that it's not about me as an individual, it's about me as the ocean in the drop. It's not me the drop and what the drop can do. It's the understanding of the ocean in me that therefore brings everybody else into play. We were talking last night in class, in the Trower class, we have one of the members of our class won the bronze medal at the 1972 Olympics in diving. And you know, I was saying, so if we were all to really, and everybody was so surprised because nobody knew it in the room, you knew it. And Craig. So what's interesting is that if that means that everyone in the room won the bronze medal. In this oneness capacity, the power that is Craig, it's never separate. And we agree with that, the non-self. But I think the Buddhists tend to take it to the extreme of, it's so much not about me, I deny myself of everything in order to.
Well, yeah, it's like they deny themselves of alcohol. And not just that pretty much.
Spiritual aspect of your life.
Yes, that's why you'll never be a Buddhist. But as far as sexuality too, Buddhists, well, it's interesting because it says it's neither good nor bad. However, you are told if you stay away from it, you will reach nirvana quicker.
Right.
That if you do not succumb to your sexual desires, and you just, it's interesting because I'm kind of teaching this right now in BODs, this whole thing of cravings. Don't give in to the craving, find out what the craving's about, and you will expand exponentially. As you were saying this, I was like, oh my God, I'm a Buddhist. But it's an interesting thing because actually it is true about sexuality, that it's rampant and it's used in ways that was never intended to be used. I mean in ways to like, well, sex addiction, frankly. Huge, because people are using sex to avoid their feelings, using sex to avoid So I can see a lot, bless you, a lot of good in this. And I'd be very interested in a follow-up from you on modern Buddhism, of
Yeah, because it never even occurred to me about modern Buddhism. Like I didn't even look for it, delve into it, see it, because I really was not in my consciousness.
Would you agree to giving me another 15 minutes on modern Buddhism
Yeah,
at some point when we're wrapping this all up? Because I think
yeah,
it's very
for
beneficial,
sure.
especially if we're looking at what are our similarities to these religions. I think we would be much more in alignment with a modernistic version of Buddhism than perhaps the. And yet, I see a lot of similarities. Don't you?
Yeah, but I see a lot of similarities.
Yeah. And I was a Buddhist. I mean, I was a Buddhist for 3 years. But
Oh, Karen has her hand up.
Karen, Mitchell or
Mitchell.
oh,
Yeah, you know what? As far as the sex and the alcohol, the drugs, sex, and rock and roll, I think it really centers on this whole attachment thing, because there's that whole idea too about eating meat really attaches you to sort of the earthbound kind of energy of killing something in order to get your sustenance from it. So there's this sort of idea of detaching yourself from the wants and the desires of this earthly plane. And I think that's kind of where the Buddhism thing goes, as far as those tenets about, not killing and not, and the sex too, any kind of cravings or anything that's going to attach you and ground you into this corporeal or temporal existence rather than moving you on into nirvana is going to cause you suffering, I think, in the Buddhist viewpoint.
and it's something that we aspire to.
Right.
Are all Buddhists,
We do?
Not that.
all Buddhists
That's funny,
vegetarian?
Helen.
Are all Buddhists vegetarian or vegan or?
Yeah, my understanding. I'm not.
Yeah, I think so.
I
I
think
believe that's correct.
You
Are
can't. Yeah.
The Buddhists I know.
because they won't eat anything.
That's why I want to do a thing on modernism. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, do they have dietary restrictions and all that?
All
Are
the
you? Was that a statement, or are you asking?
I'm just wondering what kind of dietary
Mm-hmm.
restrictions are part of the religion.
Yeah, and I didn't come across a whole lot, except that they don't kill anything. So
Well, this is interesting. It said, should Buddhists be vegetarian? Not necessarily. The Buddha himself was not a vegetarian.
Okay.
But how do you?
yeah, they just don't kill anything. But that doesn't mean they don't necessarily eat what's been killed.
Has been killed by someone else.
Mhm.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not in the monastery. That's why they go out into the village.
The neck off.
Someone else with bad karma. Out killing things. Oh, God.
Yes, it is. Okay, good.
All right.
Great. You are just at your time limit.
Good for you.
You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. Any parting words?
Namaste.
Okay. Karen, Terry Taylor, you're the first one up. Terry, are you there?
Yes.
Comments? Critique?
I enjoyed it a lot. I had a hard time with all the text on the screen. I tended to read ahead and lost a little bit of it because of that. That's the only critique that I have.
Okay, great. Karen Mitchell?
I loved it. Ellen, you have such a beautiful teaching style, and you're clear, you're concise, you have good energy. So I wasn't bored or falling asleep. I think you knew when to move on, you knew how to move it forward. And there was a lot of text on the slides, but you followed the slides. So I was following with you. So I didn't really have too much of a problem with that. But it there's a lot of text. There's precepts and pathways and all sorts of stuff that you had to get out there. So I appreciate that.
Great.
Excellent.
Karen Frost? K2?
I followed it pretty well. I thought it was great. I clearly had a whole lot of questions. So I feel like, whenever we do these world religions, there's a lot of content associated with it. And so it's challenging to have all of these details. But what you had, you knew really well.
But you would have liked more.
Well, I wouldn't say more so much as it, was identified that the philosophy is what was focused on. So in regards to, I feel like the practices part was the part, this is the history of the Buddha. I would have loved to, that's why I asked about the source material, love to have known kind of what that source material consisted of, what the Buddhists sort of use as their source material, and also just identify how it's practiced, information about chanting, the actual application process of Buddhism. I would have liked to have learned about.
Okay, good. Okay, Erin?
It was excellent. I think it's hard because you're not here, and I think it would have gone a lot better because for me, I couldn't see one word on it because for here, the TV's so far away, and so I just couldn't read one word. But we just didn't know. Probably if you were in the room, it would be much better. But it was interesting to watch you because you've been every single presentation you've ever done. I would give you pretty much an A+. Like you're always on, and it was interesting because there's so much content with a religion like this, but there's no way you could have known everything. And so it was interesting to see you not as usually you completely embody whatever you're presenting, and this time you didn't know as much. It was just I could notice that difference in you, but I would still give you an A for what the content that you brought to it.
Great. Mariana?
Yes to everything that has been said, and again, beautiful job. And like Erin said, I would have liked to have had bigger print and maybe to be able to read it, and not so much on a slide. And but overall, and a little bit more maybe about what the ceremonies, what the Dalai Lama plays, what part how that came about, and is there hierarchy? And but yes. You're always eloquent and beautiful and so well read. And thank you.
Great. Okay. Sharon?
I really liked it. I thought the information you gave was very interesting about all of the philosophies, kind of like the history of the religion, but I didn't get a sense, and I agree with Karen Frost, that I just didn't get a sense of what a Buddha, how they practice their religion and what their daily, I know you did say that they just use, they sort of pray all the time, but I just didn't get enough of a sense, I don't think, of the current practices even in other countries. And I agree that it would have been good to hear a little bit about Dalai Lama and that, but I know that, you focused just on the philosophy, and that already took, most of the time. So, but it was always entertaining and interesting what you presented. Thank you.
My only comment is I agree with everything everybody's already said, and I love your demeanor. You just have a very calm, center, grounding about you. You're just a beautiful teacher in that way. So thank you.
Yes.
David?
Hi. Of course, what everyone says is true. All of the wonderfulness of your presentation, your ability, your style. Erin nailed it very clearly, as did Ellen. It's such a vast concept of philosophies as well as the rituals that within the short time we're allotted, it would be virtually impossible to cover everything and satisfy everyone. What I might find interesting, other people might find unnecessary. Probably so. I'm going to challenge you in a couple of things. One, you said pretty emphatically that his life is clearly chronicled. In fact, the history of Siddhartha Gautama is, in terms of life and death, when he was born, all that kind of stuff is really not. There was no real, not like, for example, Confucius, where there was absolute dates. Secondly, you didn't say this, but it was in your slide that when he left the palace, he changed his name to Gautama. But my understanding of the history is that his given name was Siddhartha, and his family name was Gautama. So Gautama doesn't mean much other than of Gautama, which was the family lineage. And I don't know if you noticed, but your 17 precepts, I think it was, had 18 items.
Yeah.
Details, but
Yeah. I had one line that was off. That didn't make any sense.
but very informative. The concept of basic. I think you covered this very well. The basic elements of beauty of Buddhism was presented, and attractively so. It makes me interested in knowing more about it, and I would love to know more about it.
Okay, Con.
I have yet to see a presentation from anyone that I wasn't fascinated by the topic, or that in some way you didn't grab me. And I want to say that this particular subject I know very little about, even though I took a lot of religious studies classes. And I think I learned a lot from what you had to say. And I feel like you're such a welcoming teacher. You're so open to the feedback, well, wait a minute, what about this? And wait a minute, what about that? And you're so open to it and so transparent about going, well, you know what? No, I don't know. I'll have to look that up. And I find that, I just find that reassuring in an instructor, because I feel like, okay, you're being real, you're being honest with me. And that's, for me, that's key in an instructor.
Great. Okay, so I agree with everything everyone has said, Ellen. I'm looking at this, all of these presentations from two points of view. One is you as the teacher, and the other one is your material. So you as the teacher, I can't fault. I did not particularly like all of those notes. Unlike Aaron, I actually could read them all, and I did read them all. So, but it was a little bit distracting. But I agree with Karen Mitchell as well. Not as distracting as some of the other classmates who have done this, had used that same technique of so much stuff up there. You actually stayed with it. And as I was going through it and I was critiquing it, I'm thinking, okay, so I don't like this style of teaching, and yet she's so good a teacher that it's not freaking me out. It's not pissing me off. Because you kept up with me. As I'm reading it, you're still talking, and I'm able to now listen to you and read it at the same time. I still don't think it's the best way to do it, because when those come up, and you can all agree or not, when those come up on the board, it's like, oh my God, you're kidding me. Yeah. I mean, that's the energy the room takes, you know, as soon as that happens. Again, but on the two different sides, you still stayed with it, so kudos to you. And you're used to teaching, so who knows, maybe that's what you have to do in the Hoffman method, that there's tons of stuff on the wall, or how you present it. I don't know. You're saying no, so okay.
No, actually there's no PowerPoint at all.
Okay, good.
Yeah. No, we only use flip charts.
Okay, so too many notes. I agree. As far as a teacher, you are a very talented, gifted teacher. I very much applaud you for how you authentically handle the room and don't pretend you know what you don't know, or try to double talk your way out of something. You just kind of go, oh, I don't know, which believe it or not is a strength, because the class now trusts you even more. So that's really important. Never double talk your way out of it or try to bluff as though you think you know it. Don't, because if you don't, we know you don't. I agree, though, that I would have liked more on the practice of Buddhism. I'd like to know what their sacred books are. And while you may say there aren't sacred books, there actually are. They're called the Tripitaka. And I would have liked to have known that about. So just some of the things, just a little more in depth. But what you did was present a subject that someone gave you to present. So it's not like, I don't know, how much passion did you have for Buddhism?
Well, I actually really liked it, but I'm wondering because it was only for 45 minutes, and you said pick one kind of thing that you can jive with and teach it. So, as I'm going through and it's like, oh my God, and there's this and this and there's this, I'm like, oh, well, but I don't have time to teach all of that. So yeah, I mean, all the rituals and the practices and the, where it is and all the different countries and the different styles, like I would have loved to have gone into that, but I don't know. Either I misunderstood what you said and you wanted more of a general kind of, okay, get through all of it in 45 minutes, but I just kind of focused on kind of more historical and, sort of what their major teachings were, what the philosophy was. So.
No, I kind of wanted an overview. I kind of wanted everybody to present as much of the religion as they could. But I understand what you're saying. You went for it.
Okay, so then, yeah, I missed the boat on that then.
Right. I'm more interested right now. I am interested in learning these. I'm interested in us getting more information on all these religions. But the real thing here is how do you teach? What kind of teacher are you? And you are quite a good teacher, and that's good. And a teacher that I would want to sit and listen to. And that's really, you're only going to have students because they want to sit with you. Erin is a very good teacher because her class keeps growing. More people come each week, as opposed to some classes around here. People, and I've watched it. They come in to teach, and people come in, and then they get less and less and less as the week goes on. Erin's is growing. So basically, you know how good you are because they either come or they don't. And once they're with you, they either stay or they don't. So great job. Really great job. Please take that 15, you can even have 20 minutes if you like. But give us the next, give us modern Buddhism so that we can just know a little bit more about this, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. Okay, everyone, do you want to take a 5-minute break and pee before we hear Miss Allen?
By the way, Erin,
Yes, you can
did
take
you note that?
I did note that. Thank you very much.
God forbid you notice when I give you a compliment.
That's very nice.
Corella Bill over here.
By the way, the classes morphed a little bit on Tuesday, and I did want to. I'll send Connie a little bit of a note on that. But
Sounds sexual.
yes, we're taking the meditation down to like 20 minutes, and it's really a mastermind group. So it's really for the intention of practitioners and spiritual entrepreneurs, people that are really taking this work out into their expression. So
So it's a different class.
It's
not a
really
meditation class.
it's really changing.
Good.
And so I will rewrite something for Connie, but after announce it like that, because it really is the intention. Really, what I really truly meditate and pray on it. Really, I feel like the practitioners and ministers of all the centers is what I ideally, the bigger vision of it is to be able to get a mastermind. It's a 9-month program where they birth a baby over the course of the year, and they actually monetize this work for themselves at whatever level they want to do.
Okay.
Erin, I haven't come in because I have clients that go into the late afternoon.
It's no worries.
And well,
Yeah.
here's my question.
It's interesting.
The reason I come here is because I book it, but my business doesn't like that all the time. But on the nights that I don't have clients, is it worth my time to come in?
Absolutely,
So I'm not
because
going to miss a whole bunch of stuff and say, well, I don't know.
no, you will not. And because it's still kind of a work in progress for me. But what I really want to do is the first 20 minutes is really emptying the mind and doing visioning your ultimate vision of whatever you want to do with this work in your life, your vision. And then I'm going to have same things every week. For example, we will celebrate something for the week, whatever it is that you want to celebrate about whatever you got accomplished or you were, your whatever breakthrough you have for yourself, whatever it is. And then you're going to actually write down some extraordinary actions you could take this week. So you'll actually, there'll be like something that you do every week that's a similar thing. and then I'll probably have like a 20-minute section on actually teaching something new. Something from a Napoleon Hill mastermind, something, a distinction that I bring to it, and something from strategic coach of how to take your goals, see what's standing in your way, and transform the problem into an opportunity and into an action item, things like that. So each week you can, you'll be able to comment.
You kind of just read and then went, okay, so.
And it's just donation only, and it's going on to the
I
side.
can
So
read it, but she read it and kept expanding it and talking about it.
Right, because some things I did, but I didn't do it for everyone. Right. And also, as I'm doing seven individuals in my history.
Well, you're good. I actually don't think I'm saying it doesn't about the camera, but I mean, but yeah, you got, it happens.
Why, thank you.
To be honest with you, it's a little stressful.
I don't get it at home, let's put it that way. So I appreciate it anywhere I can.
One of the pitfalls of marriage is that we tend to stop seeing what we saw at the beginning. We stop. It's one of the things I learned with over the years that I don't do anymore with me. I definitely remind her that she looks good.
Yeah.
Because it's necessary. We're supposed to do that.
I know, but it's true, we do forget.
Well,
Oh, God.
and that too. I mean, I'm just.
We know.
And it's fascinating. Yeah, a lot mesmerizing. I mean, it's fascinating.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I'm like,
Especially if you're not going to give me each 5 minutes.
well, and it's interesting because some of the books that I've got, maybe I'll bring a couple minutes just because tomorrow I'm going to get the the Holmes papers.
Seminar lectures? The
I'm
Holmes
not sure.
papers.
It's
What are
just
the
the
Holmes
Holmes
papers?
papers. That's how they have organized it. But I have one book on Quimby from 1919. I think released.
I have the Queen manuscripts in my office.
Oh, I think that, yeah. So it's, yeah.
Are you next week?
No, on the 11th, thank God.
Who's next week?
It's Sharon and
Terry. Catholicism and Christianity.
No, because Catholicism and Christianity is one with
That's
her.
me, that's me and,
Catholicism and Christianity is Terry. And
it's Karen Mitchell next week.
Oh, Karen Mitchell and Sharon.
I'm gonna get
Karen
your set.
Mitchell.
Okay. And also, I was wondering at one point,
Those
because I
are
spent
very comfy shoes.
relativity and absoluteness.
Your shirt looks very raspberry on the camera.
It does, huh?
Yeah, I like it.
I would like.
You haven't got
to
any
around.
on our scene.
So the relative is actually the
That was purple yesterday.
And so that the relative is in the absolute. So that in the absolute there is cause and effect.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm still opening up to understand.
The absolute is everything.
It is, it's first part, the way
You
also
are?
that
Well, you know, after you listen
That's
to
not right,
criticism,
you know,
it's like,
relative is in the
can't
absolute.
change anything I've already done.
The absolute is cause and relative is effect.
Well, your hair looks good.
Relative
Thank
is
you.
the
I washed it today.
You watched it.
But we don't call conscious mind the absolute.
No, it's just in the back of the dictionary when he has relativity and absoluteness. And he talks about to
Right, relativity,
and
not the
absoluteness.
relativity.
And then it starts. He also talks about relativity.
Not bad.
Relativity.
No, it didn't
Well,
start, but I just decided that it actually
were
worked.
1927.
I can't see
The
it.
seminar lectures were 1950.
You have the view that
So this
you
is
see the
30
next
years
one
later.
coming up.
Yeah,
Are you
I was at the
aware
screen.
So
that
you're reading
when
from
you
the
see
old version of Holmes, which is what most of the religious scientists do, unfortunately.
that you probably
But you
didn't
gotta
have
go read what he
Turn
wrote
it down.
turn it down.
I already have it.
That's when he said, I was wrong.
Okay, just.
The relative is the
so
absolute.
we don't jump.
And the absolute is the relative.
So nobody freaks out.
So the relative is the absolute at the level of the relative.
Okay. 'Cause
So this, while I think it's not that important to understand what he said here, other than to get the stepping stone to what he ultimately said.
Okay. All right. Because I just
Because I've had that same argument with like Moira Fox, where she goes back to this book and argues it, and I'm like, you can't argue this thing with me based on what he wrote in 1927 when I'm showing you what he wrote in 1950,
Right.
whatever it was.
Okay. Yeah, because I
It
just
still didn't suffice for her.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I prepared based on the original assignment, which was 16 minutes.
Yeah, it was 60 minutes. And she went to 60 minutes. She doesn't know it, but she went for an hour. She had 2
Well,
minutes
with
left.
a lot of question and answer she did, so.
Yeah, but that's
Well,
part of it. If you're teaching a class, they're like, class is over, questions, and then you have to go another half hour. Could you imagine that last night?
We do.
I shot myself.
How many times have we been in this room till 10?
This is a ministerial class. This is very
So there you go. You
difficult.
guys are stuck here till I'm done.
I would never nail Aaron to a cross during a normal class. Only in ministerial.
That's true. And now pretty hard for this. Do you want tape to put the phone mic on?
Oh, I have to wear that thing?
Yes, please. Ah! The thing is this one picks up everything, which is beautiful.
So I'm
But it
sorry.
picks up everything, which distorts the sound. So if you are clear in that, then we
I
can hear
understand.
exactly what you're doing. I know.
I am so surprised that you and Stephen didn't connect about that, because I thought you would have said, okay, we're gonna go. Or you would have said, hey.
I was in rehearsal all day. He could have a message on my machine. I wouldn't even know.
Oh, really?
I got out of rehearsal.
It's
ran
really
over,
good.
closed,
And I've been on
got back
stage
here
many
at 7
times,
o'clock.
but it still does.
Well, this isn't different.
By the way,
Should be.
that's the excuse that we
I
gave
know.
for why you didn't go to his installation.
I was in rehearsal
That's
till
what I
5
figured.
o'clock.
Yeah.
I wrote him. He knew I couldn't come.
Wait,
How would you feel about
Honey,
just change it to
let's
mastermind?
fix this.
It makes it clearer of what it is.
Well, I will tell you one
Tape
thing.
it there, so it'll-
You've been promoting it as a meditation class.
I know.
So it's kind of, I'm fine to change
Yeah.
that. But just know that when you do
Sometimes it
that,
just forms to your ear. You can
Okay.
bend it to form to your ear.
you gotta be careful.
Yeah, it's really.
Did you see me on camera just now? I'm like, oh.
Breast?
Well, that's always there. Please.
Yeah,
What is it about gay men and breasts? Jesse and I were having the same conversation.
Jesse likes breasts
Jesse
too?
does.
Yeah.
That's not like, let's not.
I thought they could just talk. It's so funny now you just talk about your gay son.
So if you know of any nice 17-year-old gay boys, let's go.
Who are stacked?
You have nice breasts? Yeah, we don't have any other gay boys as far as we know in the team.
Oh, your son is
Not
gay?
ours.
Well,
There's
I
a
would
lot of
never
them.
try. You can never
There's a lot
tell.
at camp.
I mean, I can never tell what one man might be attracted to. So I would never try to matchmake with you.
Oh, I do know. It's unbelievable.
Jesse told me at one point. He
It's
said,
a
he said,
sickness for
I'd like
me.
to
I'm
find
like,
you as a
you know
teenager.
what?
He
I know
said
someone.
And yeah, but in the
There's some
past when
pictures
I've
of
done
you,
that,
if you'd like to
it's
see them.
like, oh. It's
Actually, I should have said,
nothing like
that's Will.
Yeah.
Okay. I know
No,
someone.
no, I'm not.
I
Who are we waiting
someone
for?
you.
Mariana?
Mariana?
Okay, great.
Who's on? Oh, they're all back.
They're all back there.
Is this a good
Secretary.
spot to be?
Jerry?
I think so. I
Viewers
can't
at
see
home, what
right
do you
now.
see? Nah, yeah, you're all nodding. That's cool. What do you see?
I see
We see
Ellen and everyone else.
Do you also see her slideshow?
No, they shouldn't.
No,
No.
you don't see
They
Rachel.
haven't started.
Oh, okay, good.
All right, well, we're just about ready to start.
Did you just see that?
James,
Yeah,
am I okay to go second next week?
This religion.
I saw that. Yeah, you said you want to go second or first?
I need to go second.
No problem.
Technology.
Thank you. My technology.
All right, yes.
Well, who's supposed to be presenting with me next week?
You are
Karen.
with
Me.
Yeah,
Karen. Karen, you're next week with Karen Mitchell.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's-
You're going first.
You're going first,
go
just so
first.
you know.
Who's going first?
You are.
Oh, fine. Yeah, yeah, I know.
Sharon's on first, Karen's on
Okay,
second.
shall we?
Okay.
Hold on, let me put my hour thing on here and make sure that,
Same here. Okay.
Ellen, you look just gorgeous.
Isn't she beautiful?
I know,
She's
you-
all boobs too.
You
look
get, I know, really, well, it's the Global Twin Syndrome.
It's the global.
By the way,
It only took 10
there's only
years.
one gay guy in here.
It's the
Okay.
global two
Keep that
center.
in
That's
mind.
what it is. Yeah. You've seen one.
I was
you
in
wanna see
that.
I mean, I definitely appreciated that, but I just want to remind you.
Gay men like breasts, and first of all, I am not just gay.
This
You'll
is-
find that out when you come to see my show. I am very much, if Kevin and I were to break up,
Oh, you would have so many people.
and I would be very happy to be trying them all out. As long as they didn't go to my church. Remember, DFF. You all remember the first week of Ministerial, right? DFF.
You would lose half your congregation if you and Kevin broke up.
It's like, I'm out of here.
DFF?
DFF.
Don't
Don't
fornicate. Don't fornicate.
I don't even have that in consciousness. That's why I'm like, DFF?
Oh my God.
Yeah, actually, now I think it should be.
I
so
think
let's
I'm actually
include
a monk.
don't
I'm a
fumble the
Buddhist
fun.
monk, so I don't have that problem.
Don't fumble the fun.
DFF. All right, and on that note,
Yes.
I think we should start.
Would you like me to just start the whole thing?
Great introduction to Taoism.
Yeah, you can. You can just, I mean, as long as they can see that, but I want you to stay on that screen for a moment.
I just did something because it's I'm used
Can
to
you all
it.
see the slide,
No,
folks?
they can't because I didn't give it to them yet.
Hold on 1 second now.
Sorry, guys. I will get this one day. Maybe before school's over, but start.
That just means you get to do it the next.
Yeah. Is that better? How's that? Do you see your slide? Tell me yes. No?
No.
Damn. How did I do that? Helen, yours was keynote, right? Yeah. Okay. So
Do you write these things down?
I did. I just have my
Where
notes in
is
the
it?
other room.
Do we want to go get them before you?
All right.
Okay.
Right.
How you read those notes, I have no idea.
Oh yeah,
I
some
know,
days I
right?
wonder too.
We're working on getting more clarity and typing things out so they're really easy and in a good place, and organized and ordered.
We are.
I am.
We're getting there. No, we are. It's just still going. And
We have a template for the Tizay now.
We do, and thank you for that. I'm grateful.
We have a
Barbara Shane.
Yes, I saw that. Very good. I
Are
loved
you
it. It looks
seeing
great.
it now? Because it's not in share screen.
I can't wait to be at the Tezay as just a congregant,
That would be great, wouldn't it?
taking notes.
Bring in your consciousness to us.
Yes.
Here's the slideshow.
Next week I'm gonna need all the spiritual merching I can get.
Did you sell out on the 5th and 6th
Opened
yet?
it, and it's
I'm not in charge of that. I don't know.
You don't have.
I'm
to-
getting my hands off it.
I have not been told we are sold out yet.
I
So
gotta get my tickets.
I have my ticket.
I'm waiting for Kevin to say
Coming on the
yes.
5th and the 6th.
We are sold out, but I do not know for sure.
Are you coming on the 5th or the 6th, Ellen?
The 5th.
When are you
Opening.
coming, Sharon?
The
5th? Is your whole clan coming?
Just me and Patty
Yes.
and Alan.
I said that now. That's what I
I don't see any dawning. of
And
it
Alan
at
didn't
all.
get, he didn't go to the
You see nothing.
the reading,
Oh, good.
so he hasn't seen it.
He's
at
a
all.
virgin.
Yeah, he is, more or less.
You still don't see anything.
But he thinks
Really?
it's gonna relate to a lot of it.
I did what it told me to.
He thinks it's
I
gonna
really
speak
do.
to him.
I think it might. It's gonna speak to Ellen too. Didn't you just do this?
I did, but hers was a keynote, and the two
Oh, what you're
react
saying, the
differently.
PowerPoint?
This one's PowerPoint.
I am using the screen next week,
David's thing?
yeah, with David's projector. And
Well, if worse comes to worse, can you just put the camera on the?
If worse
We
comes to worse,
can.
just send it to them so they can put it
Yeah,
on
we
the screen
can.
themselves.
I'm just not happy that all of a sudden this is not.
You know what?
I just sent
Email
you
it
an
to
email.
email it to all of them and they can watch it and
Alright,
follow.
alright.
David, can you bring your little CD playing unit that just sort of sits on the table for next week, please?
Which thing that sits on the table?
It's a little like a CD player music thing that just sits on the table.
Yeah, you mean the wireless speaker?
Yes.
Yes.
How does it work? Is it from my phone or is it?
It's Bluetooth.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you mind bringing that on next week?
I will bring.
I already started your timer, so let me.
Oh, bring it on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Guys, I'm at home. I'm going to send this to you.
So Karen and Helen and Terry and Karen, look on your emails and then just pull it up so that you can see what we're seeing.
I just emailed you. It's a great presentation. Would you mind sending me
Thank you.
PowerPoint? I
You
would
got
like-
all of that from the
Oh, yeah.
opening slide.
You did this on PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Very nice.
This is my heart-centered programs template, so I love the back.
Which one?
My
Heart-centered.
heart-centered programs.
I love
My
it.
business.
Okay, check your emails. I just sent it.
And then can we just figure out how to do this and then have it literally like
Right here where I can get it.
type
I can't check my email until we unshare the screen.
Okay, so
Oh, I'm sorry. There you go.
Thank you.
And Aaron.
tell me when you're ready, ladies and gentlemen.
Is it you coming? Are you gonna write by yourself? Or you bring yourself?
Myself. Well, I was gonna come with, there's a few other people on, so. Yeah.
I think Rosa Marquez is coming in.
Yeah, everyone.
They're all
I've got it.
You got it?
Yep.
I have it. I'm downloading it now. The download's kind of big.
Yeah, it's a big file.
Got a
It's
lot
a
of
big
stuff
file.
in it.
It's
Yeah.
It's because of the template and everything. So, alrighty,
The opening template.
I've got it.
got it.
Just so you know.
I share a
Oh, I
PowerPoint
see
every
something
Friday.
on there, see a speaker thing.
Yeah, it's not the opening slide. Music's not working.
No, because I've made it work before.
Otherwise, you'd be
Several
listening
times
to calming music.
Keynote and
And we'd be
PowerPoint work
sad.
on Macs.
No, I do it every single Friday. I've got a PowerPoint there and there's I don't have my face in there because I'm
Does
not.
everybody got it?
I lost it.
Oh no!
Sent you a link.
What did you just say?
I've got it. I've
got
got it.
You got it?
Okay, I got it.
Okay, and now from Long Island, Ellen Content.
All right. So is everybody ready to go?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, good. So you know what? Let's just take a nice deep breath in.
Yes.
Technology did not exist during Taoism. And so great minds think alike. So just like Helen started off her teaching in class, I would like to invite everyone to just close your eyes for a moment and take these words in. Your mind must become one. Do not try to understand with your ears, but with your heart. Indeed, not with your heart, but with your soul. Take another nice deep breath in. And let us begin learning more about this absolutely incredible ancient Chinese philosophy. And what you just heard was from Chong Tzu, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but you will learn more about him a little bit later in the presentation. So next slide, please. So here's what we're going to cover. We are looking at what Taoism is, the founder, development, types in China. Today I'm not going to read every point, you can see it there. But what I'm going to do is a high-level view and an introduction to Taoism. Okay, Connie, if you could go ahead. So,
If you are not muted, please mute yourself now.
otherwise, we will hear every sound that goes on in your apartment or home. So what I'm hoping everybody gets from this high-level introduction is 5 key things I want you to walk away with. Is number 1, I want you to have an understanding of what Taoism is. Number 2, basic concepts and practices. 3, who the key people and the texts are. 4, famous sayings and quotes, and a lot of which you already know. And then the 5th thing is similarities to science of mind. Connie? So we're just going to start, number 1, with what is Taoism? And what's the first thing you notice?
Spelling.
The spelling! That's right. So you'll see this as Taoism or Taoism. And there's no right or wrong because there's no Chinese alphabet. It's only symbols. So it really depends on which understanding or explanation. There's the Wade Giles, which spells things with a T, Taoism, and that began in the 1900s. Or what is more common today, which is pinyin pronunciations in the 1950s, and that's where you see the D. So there is a little bit differences, but it's basically the same. So what is Taoism? It is a religious tradition that is native to China. It's somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 years old. It has spread to other parts of Asia, more recently to Europe and to North America. But it's really one of the most poorly understood religions or traditions, because there really isn't one Taoism. And you're going to see as we go through this. Now, one thing that is common across all understandings is that there are 3 treasures. What they believe is that every human being has 3 treasures. There's the Jing, which is sperm, ovary, essence, which is basically the physical body. All right, so I'm going to actually put them in what our circle is to see some of the similarities. So Jing would be where? It's physical body. J-I-N-G. Physical body would be the bottom, right? So this is okay. Another essence that they believe is Qi, which is energy or thoughts and emotions. So where would we put that? Middle. Okay, so we have middle, we have top. Online, what do you guys think?
Thoughts and emotions?
Thoughts and emotions. Thoughts.
Yeah, top, consciousness.
I would say top, right?
Top.
That's where I would put it, yeah. And then the third would be Shen, which is spirit or spiritual power. Where would we put Shen?
Soul in the middle, but not sure.
That's spirit. Oh. I would actually put it
On
outside.
top. Yeah.
Outside. So here's the difference. They do say it's in, we possess all, but here's the thing. Wu, which we're going to learn a little bit more about, means emptiness, integrates all 3 treasures. So Wu, emptiness, which integrates all 3, where would we put Wu?
In the middle.
To me, Wu would be the same as the soul. Would be the same as the soul.
Hey, Ellen?
Yes.
Is chi ever spelled QI, or is that a totally different
No,
thing?
it's also spelled QI, absolutely.
Ellen, can I suggest you get a different marker, please?
Absolutely. So, some similarity, but also some differences. Next slide. So, Lao Tzu, how many of you have heard Lao Tzu? Yes. Probably most people have, right? He's considered one of the most important figures in Taoism, and he's also known as Lao Tzu, or the elder, or the old man. And it was basically during the time of the Han Dynasty that a historian named Qin created the first Lao Tzu biography. But not everybody thinks that he was a real person. There's some thoughts around whether or not he even existed, or if he's a compilation of people. There's also some accounts that suggest that he lived around the 6th century and that Confucius actually came to visit him to get some philosophical advice. And so just like in the Bible, in terms of how many people really, or some of the bibliological figures, we don't know if all of them actually existed or not. So we're going to learn more about Lao Tzu and some of his teachings a little bit later in the presentation. So let's look at where Taoism falls within China. And it's part of one of the key philosophies of China. There was, as you can see on the slide, I know it's a little bit hard to read, but Confucianism, which David gave us information about or lesson on, Taoism, and then legalism, and then I'm going to add also Buddhism, even though Buddhism came a little bit later. But Taoism became the official religion of the Tang Dynasty, right? But later it was supplanted by Buddhism. And there was a lot of rivalry between Taoism and Buddhism. One of the key things is when Buddhism did come into China, it came from India, as we know, and it did butt heads to be the royal religion of the country. But Taoists did not believe in suffering. They believed that life is generally happy and that we should live with balance and virtue. So some of the differences between Confucianism and Taoism is Confucians believe that there was a big gulf between humans and nature that weakens and destroys us, where Taoism does believe in harmony with nature. We're going to learn more about that as we go through. Okay, so. All right, so I'm going to now talk about the development of Taoism. And it can be traced back to shamanism, actually, which spread into Mongolia and into China over 10,000 years ago. And there's basically 4 different periods: philosophical, classical, modern, and contemporary. But it's a gradual development, and it's kind of a blurred line. There's like no particular point where it starts and it stops. And it's really also about different Taoist lineages. But we're going to look at all the 4 different developments. All right, so the first one, which is philosophical Taoism, was also called the 100 School period. And this was kind of during what's called the Golden Age of China, back in 550 to 200 BCE. Now, it's called the 100 Schools because there was a lot of different schools of thought during that period of time, and it was also during what's called the Warring States period. Right? Now, we just looked at 3 different schools of thought: Confucianism, right, Taoism, legalism, and Buddhism. But during this particular period of time is when Taoism started to come into being. Now, this picture that you see here is Mount Hua Shan, and it's unique because it's one of the 5 great Taoist mountains. But what makes it unique is that it's the only mountain that is absolutely pure Taoist. That means that there were no other religious influences or practices on this particular mountain.
What was the name of it again? Mount what?
This is Mount Hua Shan, Huashan. Okay, next one. All right, so then moving on to the second period, the Way of Celestial Masters. And this is a picture of Shang Tao Ling, and he was bestowed the title of the first Celestial Master. And it was about 142 CE when Shang claimed to have received a revelation from a deity, Lao Tzu. And he began to prophesize the coming of a time called Great Peace. And the deity warned him that there were going to be plagues and beasts and demons from the underworld were going to be released on all these people, and that only 240,000 people would be chosen to be saved, to seed the next generation in the era of Great Peace. So what does that remind you of? What does that remind you of? Yeah, like the Great Flood, right? So this movement was also called the Way of 5 Pecks of Rice, because any person that wished to join this movement had to give as a donation 5 pecks of rice to become part of this Great Peace movement. Now, over a period of generations, Shang Tao's grandson organized kind of a loose organization or association into a full-blown religious community. And that's the main reason why he's looked at as really the true founder of Taoism, because he's the first one who really founded a community that eventually became Taoists. Now, here's something really interesting that's very similar to Science of Mind. People were drawn to this teaching because they taught about faith healing. And they said that illness was a result of sinful mindfulness. And they also emphasized longevity and immortality, which we're going to look more at as well. Now, one other important feature is once it became kind of organized into more of a religion, they had administrative districts, they had a hierarchy of ordained priests, talismans, moral precepts, confession of sins, what's that like? And then the resuscitation of the Tao Te Ching, which we're going to look at very shortly. So now let's move into the third period, which is the Way of Complete Perfection, or another name that you might see is Complete Reality. So the Way of Complete Perfection was also marked by its aim to harmonize those 3 teachings that we looked at earlier, Confucianism, Taoism, and also Buddhism. And it was this fusion that gave its name Complete Perfection. So it was during the Song Dynasty when all this started. A Confucius-trained layman gave up his government post actually and entered a path of Taoist training. And that's how it came to be about, that he wanted to harmonize all these different teachings into one. Right? And this is also the way of complete perfection is the monastic branch of Taoism as well. And they received training in a unique method of self-cultivation called inner alchemy, which we're also going to look at a little bit later. So third period. And again, I said that the lines are kind of blurred, so there's not a particular start and stop. So today, modern Taoism, and this is an actual temple. This is a picture of Chin Hao Temple, downtown Los Angeles. And I've got some other temples I'm going to show you in just a couple minutes. But basically what happened is somewhere around 1949, the People's Republic of China literally wiped out Taoism, not just Taoism, but Buddhism and a lot of religions in the country. So
What did? I'm sorry.
it was People's Republic of China, Mao Zedong,
Oh, yeah.
near total catastrophe of Taoism in the country during the People's Republic. And it was 1966 to 76 when temples were destroyed along with Buddhist temples, Confucius temples, and so forth. So it wasn't just Taoism. And since 1980, he died in 1979. So in some 1980 on, Taoism has started a resurgence back in China, and they've openly opened. They've opened temples, established also in Europe and in North America and worldwide. As of March of 2005, religion was enshrined in China as a basic right of all citizens, and they recognize 5 religions in the state of China: Buddhism, Taoism, Islam, Catholicism, and Protestantism. I guess that's how you pronounce it. Protestantism. So in China today, there's over 1,000 Taoist temples that have been open to the public. This does not include the Taiwan or Hong Kong, so that number is even bigger. There's about 10,000 Taoists that live in these communities. There's also about 100 Taoist associations worldwide, as well as several colleges that have been established to teach Taoism. 90,000 Taoist masters and 30,000 registered places of worship, with tens of millions of followers all over the world. Right? And that's all just really since 1980, if you really think about it, because it was pretty much wiped out with communist China. All right, so a couple other examples of some temples that are in existence today. This is the Temple of Heaven. It was first constructed in 1420, and it's the place where the emperors of the Ming and Qing dynasties worship God of Heaven. It covers an area of 273 acres, and it's the largest architectural complex in the world for rituals and to pay homage to heaven.
Where is it?
This is in China, in Beijing. Next one. This is the White Cloud Monastery. This is actually part of the Temple of Heaven. And the China Taoist Association is based here in the White Cloud Temple. It's the leading body representing all Taoists in mainland China. And this piece is an authoritative statement by the association. This is what they have to say. If all things in the universe grow well, then a society is a community of affluence. If not, the kingdom is on the decline. Right? So very profound, very profound. So one more I just want to show you. This is the Royal Taoist Temple. This is part of the Forbidden City. It's currently under restoration, and it will be open to the public in 2016. And it's been sealed up for more than 60 years. So let's all make a pilgrimage sometime this year and go see this.
Where is this?
I thought you said it was
in Beijing.
This is in Beijing?
In the Forbidden City.
It's part of, the hall, it was built in 1542 during the reign of Emperor Zhejiang of the Ming Dynasty. And according to what I read, it's going to be open to the public in 2016. I don't know exactly when,
but the Forbidden City's open.
Yeah, but to this temple. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Taoism in the West, okay? This is the Temple of Celestial Cloud in San Diego. So Taoism came to America mostly by texts of Tao Ching and Shang Tzu, because virtually China was closed to the West up until very recently, until the 20th century. And here's something really important to remember, that Taoism here in this country is very different from Taoism in China. And what did I say at the very top of this? There's no one Taoism. So it's going to look different depending upon who's practicing. Okay. So there has been a emergence of American Taoist temples, practice groups, and study centers. And if you go online today and just do a Google search, you will find all kinds of different groups that are practicing Taoism. And most Taoist organizations in this country were established specifically with Americans in mind. So we're going to look a little bit more at that. Now, speaking of American audiences, how many of you have ever heard of the Tao of Pooh? Have you read it? There's a Tao of everything, right? The Tao of everything. But the Tao of Pooh typifies the American spiritualization and the universality of Taoism. So the author Benjamin Huff, he regards Pooh's simple-minded nature, unsophisticated worldview, and instinctive problem-solving methods as conveniently representative of Taoist philosophical foundation. And that's what we're going to be looking at next, what their philosophy is. Okay. So one other really key aspect about Taoism today is because Taoism is really all about nature. There's been an alliance of different religions, Taoism being one of them, that have gotten together and formed an alliance to use religion as a way for ecology. So they basically use the essential principles of Taoism to save the planet, bottom line. 4 key principles that they follow is follow the earth, which is basically that everything grows according to its way, and humanity follows the earth follows heaven, heaven follows the Tao, and the Tao follows what is natural. So if we follow the earth, we will allow nature to unfold perfectly.
Would you say that again?
Yeah. So the Tao Te, this is right from the Tao Te Ching, and it says, humanity follows the earth follows heaven, heaven follows the Tao, and the Tao follows what is natural. So basically, humans should help everything grow according to its own way.
And in that context, what is the definition of Tao?
We're going to get to that. So the second principle, harmony with nature, again, it's about not exploiting nature, which is what we've done in this planet. So that's the reason why of following ecology principles. The third one, conscious success. What this is really all about is human desire, but it is so insatiable that we've overexploited the planet. So it's really about using our natural resources, right? Just like with water conservation and all the rest of that. And then the last one is just recognizing the diversity of species and how important it is to have biodiversity. So I'm going to show you an example of what this looks like. Go ahead, David.
Is that last term something that is actually in the book, the Taoist books, biodiversity, or is that
No,
something
this is modern day.
Okay.
This is modern day. But they took it from the basic principles of Taoism. And it comes from the 10,000 things, which we're going to see in a minute. All right, so this is actually a picture of a hotel. It is the Long Quan Taoist Spa Hotel, and it combines luxury rooms with low carbon heating and Taoist principles. This is currently in, I don't see if I have the city here. I don't seem to have the city, but it's in the mountain area of Languan. It's the site where Lao Tzu was said to have written the Tao Te Ching. And right now it's declared an ecological conservation area, and they've actually relocated, or in the process of relocating, 30,000 people, and they're being rehoused so that they can go back to regreening the mountain. So the whole complex is situated at the birthplace of Taoism, and it's being billed as an inspirational model for sustainable living, so where people can live in harmony with nature in a garden-like setting in a small city.
What part of China is it in?
You know, I don't have what China this is, but this is in place right now.
What's the name of the hotel?
It is Laoguan, Louguan, Taoist Spa Hotel. Okay. All right, honey. All right, so we're going to move into, now that we've looked at the history of Taoism and the 4 different development periods, including modern day Taoism, let's look at the concepts. What comprises Taoism? So we're going to look at each one of these individually, but one thing I do want you to write down here is all Taoists believe that we're born with certain virtues. Virtues like love, gentleness, kindness, respect, honesty, fairness, and justice. Now, when you hear those things, what does it remind you of? Anyone?
Science of mind.
Science of mind in what context, do you think?
In that spirit is love, kindness, wisdom, intelligence.
Absolutely, the qualities of spirit in God, right? I remember getting up and doing that presentation that one time. All right, so let's look at each one of these individuals. So as Sharon, you were just asking me, what is the Tao? What is the Tao?
Move to the next one.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Move to the next slide, please. Okay. So the Tao literally is translated as the way or the path. And it's a Chinese word meaning, as I said, way or path. And Taoists actually strive to act in harmony with nature and with the rhythm of cosmic forces. This is really central to what Taoism is all about. Their lifestyle incorporates classic philosophy, ritual practices, meditation, and physical exercises. So the ultimate goal is to become one with the Tao. That is the ultimate goal. And it's been called many things. It's been called enlightenment. It's been called meeting with the Father in heaven, reaching nirvana, and also ultimate understanding. And they feel it's best to begin with the energies of the body. We're going to talk a little bit more about qi and that as well. So comparison, I want to compare this a little bit to Confucianism because that was also one of the main religions at the time Taoism was being practiced. So Confucius used the term Tao to speak of the way humans should behave in society, the way to behave in society, where, and they were talking about an ethical or moral way, Confucianism. So the difference here is that Taoists believe to think of Tao as the way of nature as a whole. So they believe that Confucians were really missing the mark by focusing just purely on the human way, and that they exaggerated too much on man and failed to pay attention to the lessons that nature could offer us. Lessons about change, lessons about gain and loss, useful and uselessness. Right? So two things too I also want to bring up in terms of comparing this to science of mind. So the way of nature, who talks a lot about nature? Emerson, right? So Emerson. And harmony. Who was the big one on harmony? Trower. There we go. So it goes all the way back to Taoism, right? The way. All right, next slide. So second major concept here that in Taoism is what they call Wu Wei. Wu Wei. And this is doing everything by doing nothing. It's the art of doing without doing. Right? And it's literally translated as emptiness, which we looked at here. And it's the art of emptying the mind and getting rid of desires, which is similar to, what did we just, Buddhism, right? Losing our attachment. So it's a really important concept, and it means also natural action. Natural action. So action that does not involve struggle or excessive effort. Right? It's actually the cultivation of a mental state in which our actions are quite effortlessly flow in the alignment of life. Right? And again, in science of mind, what do we teach?
No struggle, no strife.
Yeah. Non-resistance.
Right? And our lives are unfolding perfectly, right? It's when we resist that we have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also about purging yourself of willful intent. And some like to interpret this also as less is more. So if you looked at this in a modern way, people would say less is more is another understanding of this concept. Okay. But it actually translates into the art of doing without doing. Okay. All right, so move to the next slide. Another key principle in Taoism is the concept of pu, which is simplicity. And they are believers in nature, believe in the natural. And so one of their favorite images is that of the uncarved block. And you'll see this a lot if you look at different symbols of Taoism. And so it's uncut, it's untempered, it's uncrafted, it's uncarved. And so it's all about original simplicity and just wholeness as being purely natural. And the whole concept is to make everything simple. Simplicity. Very similar as well to a lot of what we teach in Science of Mind. It's just, it just is. I am. Like the simplicity. Question.
And just what comes to me is I wonder how the Japanese interpret this, because the whole Japanese culture is simplicity, is less is more.
Yep.
Is, if you look at their houses, it's very just a block of wood, or the screens that close the door.
Yeah, and Taoism did move across to other Asian countries. So absolutely, this is a key principle across Asian cultures as well. So, all right, so let's look at the fourth concept here, which a lot of people recognize. Yes.
Yes.
Yin Yang. A lot of us have seen this and heard this, and this symbolizes harmony and creation. But here's something also important to know. This is not exclusively Taoist. This is really more of a Chinese innovation. But over the years, scholars and mystics developed more of a understanding of this in terms of nature, which is why it's very Taoist as well, even though it's not specifically to Taoism. So Taoists do believe that everything in the universe comes from the unnameable, which is another word for the Tao. So the Tao manifests as dual principles of yin and yang. It's all about harmony. It's all about creation. Things like the yin stands for earth, darkness, female. The yang is heaven, light, and male. So the idea that the Tao is the equivalent of nothingness, and they don't really have a creation story, not like in the Bible. But what they do believe is from one, the Tao is this undifferentiated thing, stuff, just like we believe as well. And the one splits into darkness and light. Right? What do we know that from?
The creation.
The creation story, let there be light, right? And then it divides into two, yin and yang. And then when they come together, then we have three and more. And we're going to look at what that is in just a moment. So
and then the coming together would also be the balance.
Yes.
Would create the balance.
The balance of the yin and yang together. That's what makes the balance. Like the dark and the light, the female and male, heaven and earth. Next one. So another key principle in Taoism is what's called...
Sorry, can I just ask a question? Just piggybacking on what Mariana was talking about. Isn't the balance in yin and yang that there is male in the female and female in the male as well?
I have heard that as well, but what they talk about specifically is that yin is the female and yang is the male, and the balance is when they come together. But I do hear what you're saying.
Oh, okay.
But I haven't read that specifically.
Okay.
Well, you can see the little dot of male in the female and the little dot of female in the male, right?
Yeah. You absolutely can.
And I wonder also, since the whole of nature, would they also revere Earth as Mother Earth?
Yeah. They do, and we're going to talk about that next in the 5 elements. So we're up there already. All right, so 5th principle here is what's called the 5 elements. So along with the law of yin and yang, the Taoists observed a pattern or an expression in nature that they interpret as the 5 elements or also the 5 phases. And these elements or energies are wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And basically, they understood that to be the primary building blocks of everything, and that everything is comprised of these elements.
What are they again?
It is wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And so that everything is a combination of these elements. So people, companies, games, plans, I mean, literally everything is understood from the perspective of the 5 elements. Okay. So also tied to that is another concept called 10,000 things. So the 10,000 things phrase is a Taoist way of saying everything that exists. Everything that exists. And they believe that they're an expression of the various ways that the 5 elements can come together and combine everything from, as I said, humans, plants, animals, buildings, everything. And because, as I said, there's really no creation story in Taoism, what they really believe is the closest thing that they have to creation story is from the one stanza in the Tao Te Ching, and I've got a slide on it, but let me just tell it to you now because it's tied to this, which is Tao gives birth to 1, 1 gives birth to 2, 2 gives birth to 3, 3 gives birth to 10,000 beings. 10,000 beings carry yin on their backs and embrace yang on their front, blending these 2 vital breaths to attain harmony. That's where they come to 10,000 things. Everything starts with 1, and it's what we teach, right? Universal to multiple to diversity. Same concept.
It all comes from the unity.
It all comes from the unity of the 1. Next slide. All right. So I've been talking a lot about the Tao Te Ching, and it's credited to be written by Lao Tzu, although there's no firm historical, we don't know for a fact, but it's 81 chapters, 2 sections, Book of Tao, which is the way, and Book of Te, which is a book of virtue. And it is considered the primary Taoist text. Now, the way it became to be written, here's the story, is it was written by Lao Tzu at the request of Yin Si, who was called the guardian of the pass. And basically, Lao Tzu was leaving. He wanted to just leave where he was living, and he was stopped. And he was basically was, in order for you to leave, I need you to write down, right, all of, some guidance for the sages and for noblemen. And so he wrote this book, supposedly, for the request of Yun-Sang, the guardian of the past. Now, here's something really interesting and important to know about this. It's the 2nd most translated book in the entire world.
Wow.
Right? Next to the Bible, it's been probably written more times than any other book on this planet. And like the Bible, it was probably written by a number of different authors over a long period of time. The main themes of the book, and I'm just going to give you a few of them. The Tao, the way, as you can see. It's also about simplicity, power of weakness, human perfection, also the art of ruling and military strategy. So it does cover quite a few things. So another...
and the Book of Te?
The Book of Te is a book of virtue.
So
That's part, it's all part of these. Yeah. The main themes are within both of those.
So even in How to Rule, for instance, they'll bring in the virtue of ruling.
Mm-hmm. The art of ruling is one of the themes. And military strategy is part of the themes of those books.
Of both books.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Which is interesting because it's the same as the Bhagavad Gita is all about, source of war, pretty much.
Right. So another major text of Taoism that not as many people are aware of is Chuang Tzu. And this also dates back to about the same period of time. Again, there's no reliable information about him, but he was kind of more of a clown. He developed kind of a skepticism about how nature worked, and he questioned whether we can even trust our own sense and judgments, which is why I picked this particular quote. And this is one of his most famous quotes, the one about the butterfly. And since I know it's a little bit hard to read, I'll read it for you guys. I dreamed I was a butterfly flitting around in the sky. Then I awoke. Now I wonder, am I a man who dreamt of being a butterfly, or am I a butterfly dreaming that I was a man? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that he was known for was also trashing scholars. He glorified misfits, but he wrote a lot of very beautiful poetry, and that's included in the Chuang Tzu text as well. All right, so next slide. There were many other Taoist texts that are not as well known, but they make up the Taoist canon, and there's about 1,500 or so books that make up the Taoist canon, right? So just like, as I said, in science, in Judaism or Christianity, there's a lot of different writers that are not as well known. But again, here the themes included philosophy, talisman, different deities, rituals, alchemy, medicine. There's a lot in these canons, and I'm only going to get a chance to touch on some of them in this hour together.
Just curious about how many people are practicing Taoism
Today?
Yeah, today.
I think I quoted that like
I don't remember if you said
90,000. I have to go back and take a look at what my figure was. But remind me after to look that up.
If I can ask Ellen, where did the Taoist canon come from? Is that Lao Tzu also, or is? No,
it's not from Lao Tzu. It's from a number of different writers. There was, I couldn't tell you specifically, but just over hundreds of years, different texts were written by different people.
So are they just Lao or Taoism sort of followers? Are they like the monks of? What's the religious leaders of Taoism called? What are their names?
Priests, and I'm going to talk about that in just
Okay, cool.
But to answer your question, I honestly don't know who wrote the canons. Just I know a lot of different people, so that's all I can tell you right now.
1,500 books.
1,500.
It says there are 20 million followers.
20 million.
And
wow.
30,000 in North America.
Okay, I 30,000
in North America.
And then, so for instance,
20 million.
Yeah. Okay. Next slide. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, and just so, for instance, perhaps one or several of those books would be about medicine.
Yes.
And
yes.
Did they speak about the importance of medicine in Taoism?
They do, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're on the next slide. So here's an example of one chapter, and this is the one that I read to you on the Tao Te Ching. That I chose this one because how does it relate to what we teach? So the Tao gives birth to one gives birth to two gives birth to three gives birth to all things. So that is the creative process that we teach. Absolutely. All right. So we're going to talk about some sayings, quotes and sayings. Now, what I know it's kind of hard to read, but I would like everybody to have an opportunity to read that. Can you, from where you are?
I can't.
So tell you what, I'll read the first one to you, and then tell me how you compare that to Science of Mind. So the first one: to obtain knowledge, add things every day. To obtain wisdom, remove things every day. Beautiful. So how would that be compared to what we teach in Science of Mind?
Beliefs and letting go of your limited beliefs.
Okay. Anyone else have a thought on that? On the wisdom
Say the
part?
first part again. To attain knowledge.
The first one says to obtain knowledge, add things every day. To obtain wisdom, remove things. So when I read this quote, what came forward for me was allowing spirit to come through. Right? Wisdom is equal to truth, and I also thought getting your bloated nothings out of the way was what came forward for me when I read that quote. Okay. So the second one, when I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. When I let go of what I have, I receive what I need. Sharon, what do you think on that one?
Well, it's like when we release our treatment and we let the universe do its work and not get into how it's done and just allow it to come through.
Allow it to come through. Anyone else have any thoughts on that one?
Well, I love the first sentence because it's great. On Bonds today, it's what everybody's doing. When I let go of when I let go of my story, not myself, I can actually step into something that may be the truth of who I am.
Yeah, and for me, I put down letting go of our limited beliefs. I receive the truth all through intuition, through spirit.
And for me, it's becoming empty and still.
Yeah.
And so that I can absolutely hear, feel, and know. Next
Beautiful.
steps.
Beautiful. Yeah, and to me, that's like the intuition, allowing that to come through. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I've got a number more because I was originally thinking I'd have each person read one, but since it's harder to read. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is wisdom, is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. Anyone have thoughts on that one? Who hasn't? What do you think, Con?
Oh, I think it just goes to the very basic of understanding your thoughts and what's serving you, what isn't serving you. And in understanding that is when you really are able to see the essence of what is.
Absolutely. What came forward for me on that one is exactly what you say. Mastering yourself is about mastering your mind and your thoughts. Right? Allowing your true power to come forward. Right, so I'm going to read the one across the top, New Beginnings. New beginnings is often disguised as painful endings. Painful endings. Who online would like to try that one? Karen Mitchell. What do you think on that one? Come on down.
Yeah, I love that one. And it's kind of like what we talk about when the universe closes a door or closes a window, it opens a door, or closes a door, it opens a window. So just knowing that our life is unfolding perfectly, no matter what it looks like, I think is what Lao Tzu already knew, obviously.
Yeah,
great.
Absolutely. And also for me is about, we close ourselves off sometimes from unlimited possibilities. We try to outline something, right? Let's look at the next one. If you are depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. If you are at peace, you're living in the present. That's a great one. Who else online hasn't spoken? Terry, you want to take a stab at that one? How do you relate that to science of mind? Is he?
I can't see.
What's so incredible that we've had this wisdom for so long, and how is it that it's incredible.
Yeah, there's nothing new about it.
Nothing new about it.
Yeah.
Ancient wisdom.
So just for time's sake, I don't mean to cut you off if you're going to speak, Tarek, but for time's sake, really what this one is about is focusing on being fully conscious in the present.
Yes.
Right? And it's also and this is right from the Science of Mind textbook, when we learn to trust the universe, we can be happy, prosperous, and well. Right? Page 33, if you want to look it up. The last one is, if you correct your mind, the rest of your life will fall into place.
Change your thinking, change your life.
So Ernest Holmes, the Essential Ernest Holmes, page 204. If you wish to enter into a less limited experience, we must sacrifice our limitations. Yeah. Right, next slide. So we've heard these quotes. We've been living this, not even realizing it. So there's three more. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Right? What is that? Aaron, what do you think? Science of Mind.
All we have is now, and so I don't know.
You have to
I'm not
take
exactly
action.
how I Think of that.
Power
but-
of decision.
Power
Make a decision.
right?
There you go.
And Ernest Holmes says, how do we start? We start right from where we are.
And where we are,
That's
right? Everything begins with in mind with our thoughts.
That's right.
It's also what came up for me too is affirmative prayer with that one as well.
That's right.
All right, next one, watch. This is a great one. I actually have this on my desk. I didn't even realize that it was Lao Tzu. Watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character becomes destiny.
Watch your character, what?
Becomes destiny.
Oh, could you send that to us? That's really great.
So, David, what do you think? Sign to mind?
As I would put it, you are the creator of your reality.
That's exactly what I had written down. The creator of your life.
Ah,
Woo! Right?
yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so the last one here, look, but you can't see it. Listen, but you can't hear it. Reach out, but you can't touch it. Invisible, inaudible, intangible, elusive. The one. Helen, what do you think? What is it?
I think it's all about faith, placing our faith in that invisible substance that comes into form and know that it's happening as soon as we declare it.
Yes,
As soon as
absolutely.
we speak it and hear the words, it's already done, and just having that faith that as it's released into the law.
Absolutely. And the one is, what is the one?
God.
Spirit, God, universal.
Spirit, God, yeah.
Well, this is the only quote that I would say we have evolved into the opposite of.
Okay.
Because really it should say, look, and you will see it.
Mm.
Listen, and you will hear it.
Yes.
Reach out, and you can touch it because it's all God.
Mm.
Yes.
You know, so
Right.
I get that, but that I think we have evolved into a different
Right.
understanding of that.
Yeah, and I agree with James, and I also think you can look at this as the unseen. Everything that we see is from something that we can't see. So, all right, next one.
Originating.
I hear someone.
Okay, anybody online have a question? All right, so we're gonna now move into some of the practices of Taoism. And so we're gonna look at each one of these things individually. So let's go. Next one. So ritual ceremony. So everything takes place inside of a temple. So these are some pictures of a temple. The next 4 slides are gonna cover ceremonies. Right? So Taoists believe in many deities. And they believe that they exist within the universe to serve specific roles. And it's within a heavenly bureaucracy that overlooks all of earthly China. That's how they view it. And the Jade Emperor oversees all of them. The Supreme Jade Emperor. I have a picture of him in just a minute. So they believe that if they make offerings to the gods at the temples using incense, the gods will help and protect them over misfortune. And they believe there's 3 ways to practice, or they call 3 vehicles or 3 paths to practice. One is doing good deeds. One is ritual ceremonies. And the third one is what they call techniques and postures, or inner alchemy, which we're going to look at in just a minute. But these all overlap to become really one way to practice. David?
Ellen, as you studied this, as you found all this information out, did you feel that this aspect of Taoism correlated to what Lao Tzu was actually teaching?
That's a really good question.
This sounds like it's got a lot of superstitious elements to it that seem to me on the face of it to be opposite of what Lao Tzu was actually teaching.
Well, there's two kinds of factions in Taoism. There's religious, and then there's like philosophical. Lao Tzu was really more on the philosophical side. What we're looking at now is really more on what you would call the religious
So much like
side.
the Confucianism element of Confucius and what became the religion of Confucius.
Yes, absolutely.
Or Jesus and what became Christianity.
That too, yes.
I'm glad that David asked that also, because I just am confused as to where the multiple deities came into play, because Lao Tzu was all about the oneness, and it was, where did all these other gods come from?
Yeah. Well, they've always believed in multiple deities. That is just one of the, again, there's different lineages of Taoism. That, and I said at the very top of this, there is no one Taoism, and is one of the most misunderstood religions or beliefs because of all of this, right? So what we're looking at now kind of falls into more of their practices and things that they do, not necessarily philosophy. So let's continue. So inside the temple, the altar, this is central to all of their ceremonies, is the Taoist altar, and its specific arrangements does vary from sect to sect. And it takes different forms depending upon the ritual or the ceremony. But there are certain objects that are always present, and they remain the same. The sacred lamp, 2 candles, 3 cups, 5 plates of food, and an incense burner. And I have no idea why, but there's, in case anyone's going to ask me, but they are all there regardless. All right, next slide.
Well, 1 gives birth to 2, 2 gives birth to 3.
There you go.
And then
2
you're,
to 3 to 5.
and then you're feeding the whole universe.
So I had mentioned before the Jade Emperor that oversees all deities. So these are what's considered the 3 pure ones, the Taoist Trinity. So in English, the first guy there is the Jade, the pure one. And as I said, they do have a similar function as the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit of Christianity. They represent 3 aspects of divinity inherent in all living beings. So the Jade Pure One, he's a central deity. He's said to have spontaneously manifested at the beginning of time. So kind of from the Tao.
This seems identical to Hinduism, but just different. I mean, the Upanishads would be like the same as the Tao Te Ching. Like it's almost identical.
Yeah. The middle guy there, Supreme Pure One, he attends to the Jade, and he's given the task of revealing the scriptures, the Taoist scriptures, to lesser gods and to humans. And then the third guy is the Grand Pure One, and he's believed to have emanated in numerous different forms, one of which is believed to be Lao Tzu. So a lot of people believe Lao Tzu was the Grand Pure One. And so these are just symbolic of the different deities.
I'm sorry, Ellen, who's the second one?
Second one is called the Supreme Pure One. And he's the attendant to the Jade Pure One. He's given the task of revealing Taoist scriptures to lesser gods and to humans. So you'll see this translated as 3 pure ones, 3 divine teachers, 3 purities. They're basically the 3 highest gods in the Taoist pantheon. Next one. All right, so as implicit in all Taoist traditions and practices, music is essential to all their ceremonies. And it's a way to instill inner harmony, balance, and simplicity. And what you're listening to is a rune, or actually that's the picture, and you can see it's an ancient 4-stringed shaped lute, and it's dated back to at least the Qin dynasty, around 200 BCE. And they sing basically to express their respect for the immortals. Next slide. All right, so another key principle is sitting and forgetting. Sitting and forgetting. You must unlearn what you have learned. So when I read this, this actually reminded me of something that you say all the time, Reverend Dave. Does anybody know which phrase he says all the time?
There's always more to know.
No, not that one, but that's a good one. What else? Anyone?
I know nothing, now what can I know?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Helen.
That's right. I know nothing. Now what can I know? Right? So classic Taoism talks about a backward movement, which is basically going back to our original reversal to our existence is really what they're talking about, the original source of our existence to attain Tao. David, go ahead.
I just wondered if that was a picture of Yodao.
And in order to unlearn, it's done through meditation. It's actually systematic deconditioning. And there's 7 stages to forgetting, which I'm not going to go into. We don't have the time for that, but there are 7 stages.
I forget them anyway.
And the reason this came up was mostly they wanted to unlearn the Confucius way of believing. Wow. All right, so next one. All right, so another practice is what's called seeking paths to immortality. So historically, the highest achievement in Taoism was to achieve immortality. And they would try to do this through breathing, meditation, helping others, and also the use of elixirs, which they no longer do because some of these elixirs did not just make them immortal, but kill them dead. They hope to live forever in human form, but with the supernatural powers of being an immortal. And they believed, Taoists believed that immortals attained a status of what they called post-mortem, that they were living, powerful, autonomous beings. And depending upon where they resided, they could be in a mountain, in heaven, or in the underworld. Right? So this is actually a painting of a heavenly master, Shang Dao Ling, gaining immortality at the mountain Yun. And so qualities that they possess as an immortal are things like the power of transformation. Who has those powers? Healing and exorcism. Extraordinary physical appearance, which James will tell you every Sunday when he gets up. Superhuman powers, telepathic or telekinetic powers. So these were all the powers they were trying to attain by being immortal. Okay, go ahead.
Did they believe in reincarnation?
They didn't believe specifically in reincarnation. They believed in becoming immortal.
In this plane.
In this plane. Right. That's my understanding of what I've read. Could be wrong.
It's going to be very interesting when you all watch the Troward class from last night, because that's what Troward, an entire chapter on. We should be able to be immortal physically.
I know, I'm working on it. Maybe my thesis will be on that.
Immortality is now.
Yeah.
So there's 8 immortals that go all the way back to the 8th century. They began originally as a theatrical performance, and they gradually worked their way into the official pantheon of gods. Right? They're now part of the mainstream. The Temple of 8 Immortals is dedicated to them. They're also part of Chinese pop culture. The Drunken Master movies is one of the 8 Immortals, and X-Men comics, if you pay attention to that, 8 Immortals as well. So I'm going to continue to move on here. So inner alchemy is the next one, which is also really important. And this is introspective practices and attentions to the energies of the body. Right? And we just looked a little bit about using inner alchemy to gain immortality. But there are a number of different ways to do this. Okay, so what is alchemy? Let me just take a giant step back a little bit. Anybody know what alchemy even means?
Transformation,
Okay.
I guess you could say. Chemistry and everything.
Yeah. So you're on the right track. It's a transmutation, right, of one substance or a combination of substances into another one, and it's usually one that's more powerful, right, that's imbued with paranormal properties. So this is not specific to Taoism. Chinese alchemy is really where it began, but Taoist inner alchemy did evolve more independently, and so it started way back, way of the Celestial Masters. They do it through visualization. Now, again, they don't use elixirs. They do it more through meditation and visualization. There's 5 stages, and there's a lot of, I don't have time to go into all of this right now, but this is a big part of their practice. Okay, next slide. Another practice falls under the umbrella of the healing arts, and it's really a broad term to cover practices to train and heal the physical body. So things like martial arts, gymnastics, Tai Chi, and sexual practices. They were very big on using meditation and different things, sexual practices, also to achieve immortality. But American Taoism is much more aligned with Tai Chi and Qigong than any of these others. Although more and more you see Chinese practicing medicine today in the United States. Just very quickly, I have a few more things I just want to talk about. So I mentioned Qi development, and Qi literally means, anybody know?
Energy.
Yeah, it means energy. It also literally means air or breath. It literally means air or breath. There's different kinds of Qi. Here's something I do want to mention to you. They believe that we actually have 3 different kinds of Qi. There's ancestral Qi, which is what we are born with, our human body. There's postnatal Qi, which is the Qi that we get, that we absorb from food, from water, from air, and doing different practices. And then there's protective Qi, which is the energy that's on the outside of our body. And it's really all about circulating life energy. So one that most of us are familiar with is the practice of Tai Chi, and this literally means ultimate fist. But it's really more of a moving meditation, a longevity exercise, and it was used primarily for achieving oneness with the universe. So it's about cultivating our body, obtaining harmony and balance, and that's why it's so important to Taoist practices. It's now the national exercise of China. There's over 200 million practices worldwide of Tai Chi, and it's used around the globe for health, stress control, and self-defense as well. Another form of exercise that's similar to Tai Chi is Qigong. This actually means energy. That's the translation. And it's made a huge comeback in China and since the 1980s when Taoism came back again. But this particular form was triggered by, this is what I read, triggered by this woman named Pu Lin, who's a cancer survivor. She claimed to have cured herself through a walking Qigong that she had developed. And that's how it became popular. And it's similar, working with different Qi functions within your body to have different movements and different steps. All right, so the last one is meditation. And again, this is a really big part of Taoism practices. There's 3 basic types, 2 primary guidelines, and 3 levels. So let me just give it to you quickly. 3 basic types of meditation. The first one is what's called insight, which is to stop and observe. Stop and observe. Second is what's called concentrated, observe and imagine. And then the third is visualization, which is really more of a focus and guiding the energy. So when we sit down Sunday morning, Wednesday night, and we do a meditation, we're doing a form of ancient Taoist meditation. Because we are stopping and observing our breath. We're really getting centered and then focusing our energy on a particular thought or quote when we do that. So let me just see. Guidelines basically is to be quiet and still and calm, and concentration and focus. And so they have different practices about how to meditate, ideally to sit cross-legged on the floor, and so forth. All right, so in summary, so the Tao is the way. It's also considered the source of all existence. It's the stuff behind the stuff. Right? The root of everything, seen and unseen. It's achieved through meditation, acting thoughtfully, and through the non-action, which is basically living in peace, living in harmony, and no resistance and going with the flow of nature. All right, so do we have questions? And who wants to share a key takeaway, a learning that they picked up from this that they didn't have before we started? So I'll ask the folks online first. Any questions? How about key takeaways?
I have one question. I noticed with the 5 elements that you had on an earlier slide, and you talked about that. I'm assuming that is where feng shui came from?
Yes, feng shui is practice on the foundation of the 5 elements. Absolutely, you're right, Helen. And I didn't bring it into this just because, as you know, there was one less. I didn't think because it wasn't specifically Taoist, it's more Chinese.
So it's okay, and that was what I was wondering. Is it? Was it a Taoist offshoot?
Yeah, no, it's not a specific Taoist offshoot, right?
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, I knew absolutely nothing about Taoism, although I recognized the word. But and so I would take away, I guess, that they really focus on being in harmony with nature. I think it sounds like they have some beautiful philosophy.
Yeah. I was so excited doing this. It's like, and it was
very
like,
interesting.
Yeah, and there's so much more. So much more.
My is that I want to read the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
I really want to look at it.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing too
I
is,
even have it. I've just never really read it.
Yeah, and just like the Bible, depending upon what interpretation you reading of it, you may read something very different from one to the next.
I've actually done that. I've read the Tao Te Ching, and Ronnie lost it, and we bought another copy, and the other copy was completely different than the first one, and we're trying to figure out how to find that original kind of interpretation. But my big takeaway was, and I know it wasn't necessarily intentional, but I love that sort of analogy of how the Tao Te Ching itself and the practice, we sort of had this kind of, wait a minute, I thought that this is what Lao Tse said. Why is this what's happening? And it's the same thing with Christianity. If you look at what Jesus said, and if you stood up and said how Christianity is today, anyone who knew nothing about Christianity would say, hey, wait a minute, where did that all come from? In the same way that we did. So that was really interesting for me to observe.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Go ahead, David.
I also read the Tao Te Ching back when I was in college, and I always thought it amusing that this is not a direct quote, but it's a pretty close paraphrase. He who knows the Tao does not speak. He who speaks does not know the Tao. And of course, Lao Tzu took 88 verses to tell us that.
Right. And the interesting thing too about that, was that Taoists really, they were mistrustful of language. They believed that because your words, we get locked into the words, right? That we really can't fully express what is truly our nature.
Which is what Don Miguel Ruiz says with the impeccability of the word.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. Anyone else?
I went to the Forbidden City, and it was one of the weirdest energies I've ever felt in my life, because there was so much dark energy in that area. And so the whole history, I think, around, I don't know who the emperor was or whatever, that basically, it reminds me of the Inquisition of the witches. It reminds me of all this stuff. And it's like, it's crazy because there's so much power, and there's so much wisdom, and there's so much, it's just so sad that it's been just destroyed for so long.
So much changed when China aligned themselves with Russia and communists took over the country. But things have been coming back, which is great.
They must have gone underground, because
a lot of them did, and they left the country as well. But yeah, right, a lot of them went underground so that they wouldn't be persecuted. So if you want to learn more about this topic, the next slide has a bibliography, and this was, you can turn down the music. So this is just a tip of the iceberg of what's out there. I did a lot of research online, and I did include every single one. And then, believe it or not, the Taoism for Dummies was a phenomenal book. And this guy teaches it at Stanford or Harvard or something, but he knows his stuff. So I did a lot of fact checking back and forth with what I originally researched. So if there's no further questions, thank you very much.
Thank you. I asked them to send up. Would you mind sending your notes too? Because you did such a great job.
If I send in the presentation, you get my notes. They're in the presentation.
Yes. Y'all know to send me whatever slide things you put together, right?
Do you want me to stay up there?
Up there, yeah. Just I know it's running late, so let's make our assessments too really short.
Sure. A++. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm just like blown away. Yeah, incredible.
Mariana?
I learned so much from you.
Completely awesome, magnificent, beautiful, clarity, wisdom, knowledge.
Yeah, thank you.
Sharon?
Ditto and ditto.
Yeah.
Connie? Can't keep up with this.
I know, right? It's the same. The way you report with rapport is so very cool, and you just gave us so much information. I learned a lot.
Great. Karen, Mitchell?
Yeah, well, just brilliant. Just so much information, but yet it didn't feel overly rushed. I was a little confused in the beginning. It took me a while to settle in with all these dates and paths and sort of formations of different versions of the Tao and all that stuff. So it took me a while to settle into that. And then I think once we settled in to the other stuff where it was just more like the quotes and the stuff that I could more easily grasp, then it was easier for me. But brilliant.
Great. Karen Frost?
Yeah, you are always brilliant, Ellen, and today was no exception. The PowerPoint, we got to cheat online because we can read all of your notes.
We're all there.
Yes, so that was a different kind of experience.
Because I didn't read all my notes, so you guys got more than me.
Exactly. Yeah, so that was awesome.
Hey, Helen?
It was brilliant. Thank you so much. That was just really, really well done. Brilliant.
Terry?
Amazing. You did it. You knew your talk beautifully. You did a lot of studying and amazing presentation. Thank you for what you did.
Yes.
Great.
You talked a lot about how to teach too.
Yeah.
I pretty much everything what everyone said. I also applaud your ability to engage us and to bring us into it more, which was great. And let us all share all this together, which was just great. No, it was great. Great job. And especially the amount of research you did. You know, how much information you had, and yet it was not particularly overwhelming.
Yeah.
So that was good.
That's good, because I was concerned about that.
The beginning, I agree with Karen Mitchell. The beginning was just a little bit, you know, it was a little dense right at the top.
Right.
But I also applaud the way you started your class by telling us what we were going to do. That immediately sets everybody very calm. It's like, oh, here's what we're doing tonight.
Right.
We're never guessing. So as you went along, I was like, oh yeah, you said you was going to do that. So that was all we did. Yes. Good.
Ellen, if I had one critique.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. I skipped right over you.
That's okay. I'm easy to forget. If I had one, if I had one critique, it would simply be that because you used beautiful slides, they were static, you were static, and there's a lot of information, so that can start becoming rather hypnotic.
I gotcha.
And you can start to nod out, especially when it gets this late. So I would suggest, if you're doing this in front of a class, again, do a little more movement just to keep it more animated.
I agree with you 100%. Agree with you 100%.
Do you want to close this out since you're up there?
Sure. All right. Okay.
I look forward to next week, everyone.
All right, so.
The bar keeps getting set higher and higher.
Yes. We're just. Everyone, just take a nice deep breath. Breathing in the Tao. Breathing out the Tao. Knowing that we are all connected to that divine energy, no matter what we call it, it is all one thing. God, Spirit, Universe, Love, Tao. It's all one thing and we are it. And so I know that tonight has been a night of denseness, of knowledge, of forgetting everything we know so that we can know new things. And then we're letting them all go to be empty containers and reside in the truth of who we are, which is God. And so as God and goddesses, I'm so grateful to be one of you, to be among you, and know that we are on this path together, this path, the way of coming back to and reminding ourselves of who we are at all times. And so tonight has been beautiful, as I know the rest of our evening will be. Safe journeys home. And so with that, I just release my word, knowing that we are already sleeping in our beds. And together we say,
And so it is.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody.